What makes a legend? What decides who is the GOAT? Well, when I hear the word GOAT, there's only one name that comes to mind. This is the name of a man who made his weakness into his strength. His driving is the best example of grace mixed with aggression. Ayrton had a good background, his family was well-to-do, and he started go-karting from about 4 years old. He was already honing his skills from that time, but there's a determination in him that surpasses pretty much all other drivers I know. You can say what you want about having a privileged background, but nothing came to him easy. Throughout his life, you can say he fought for what he wanted. And a lot of the time, who he was fighting was himself on the racetrack. Let's delve into his technique. Ayrton would brake late, but softer than all other drivers. Then he would lift off the brake relatively early and very aggressively as he turns in hard. Trail braking for a very brief moment. For the initial turn in time, there was a trail brake, but the turn in with the trail brake was just much faster, much shorter time, getting the benefit of the brakes without them being engaged for the rest of turn in. The benefit of the short time aggressive turn in, aggressive trail brake, the rest is gracing with no brakes, no inputs, but the center of balance is shifted forward. The weight is on the front end, so his tires can use their deformation to full potential just for cornering. After turning, he had the benefit of the brakes without them being engaged. Sometimes you would completely ignore the idea of a trail brake, lift off and then turn in 5 minutes later. This might sound contradictory, totally wrong driving. How is he so fast if he totally ignores the idea of a trail brake? But he justifies this in mid-corner. His entry speed is intentionally way too fast, but then mid-corner he would dab the brake and stab the throttle interchangeably. The brake would shift the center of balance forward aggressively, giving the front tires more grip, but he would lift off the brake for a super small time margin where he would stab on the gas. The stab of the throttle to lift up the wheel speed ratio, rotating his Mclaren. Let's look at it more closely to understand everything. At the first corner of Suzuka, well, look at this, he's braking so much later. It's like he's doing a proper trail brake, turning in but then lifting off completely, letting it glide a little. He is nearly connecting his trail brake to his throttle brake control, on and off the brake, due to the type of corner he is on. The corner at Suzuka is a bend that gets more aggressive the further you go. My favorite type of corner, as he takes a little bit of a wider entry, not sticking to the inside, in order to get a good exit, so wanting to rotate more in the earliest stage of this corner while still having a rounded enough racing line. He dabs the brake and stabs the throttle wide open, average under 40% opening throttle. He is keeping the RPMs at the desired level, lifting up the wheel speed ratio. Ayrton's forced rotation by wheel speed ratio makes the front turn in faster and deforms the rear tires to quite an extreme level. If you didn't already notice, Ayrton always maintains a gentle minimal steering angle from once he turns in and through rotation. He doesn't input more steering angle than the front should be steering unless he uses understeer rotation. Driving from behind Ayrton, you see a strange phenomenon. It will explain the technique a little better if you don't already understand. Very refined, he turns in the front end and the rears follow fast. Then mid-corner, as he is using his throttle brake technique to lift up the wheel speed ratio, but the open throttle does more than just rotate the car along with the brake. The open throttle over the balanced center of rotation laterally deforms the rear tires to quite a high level, and all this takes a load of inertia off the front end due to the center of rotation being balanced. Now the front end is rotating around the engine instead of pulling it, and we see a spurt of yaw rotation. He is leaning on the front and the rear tires. Ayrton uses the brake to control the center of balance, but it's not always dive forward because he wants to also lean on his rear tires as much as the fronts, and we see a spurt of refined yaw rotation. The front is turning more, not due to the more steering angle, but due to the balanced center of rotation. The rear is making the front rotate sharper, as he already turned in till the threshold that the front tires need to rotate. He doesn't scrub speed with the front tires, and as the car is subtly yaw rotating, the rear is not going wide in a drift. He's not using any rear drift angle, but rather the rear is rapidly following the front end, and it's easily keeping up. It's truly next level driving. So Senna will use the braking throttle to rotate, deform, but also manage the center of balance. They all work together, they were all connected, and so they all had to be perfect. The sensation you see from Ayrton's driving when you're looking from behind. Man, such a stable yaw rotation at high speed, but it looks like he has inside rear wheel steering. We see a similar sensation in Keiichi Tsuchiya's driving. Difference is, Keiichi likes to use understeer to rotate, and he's very aggressive yet super precise with the throttle to deform and lean on those rear tires to full potential. Look how the front is jumping, creating enough rotation for the corner. Then he calms it down on the brakes as he is nearly on the trajectory toward the apex. He doesn't need as much rotation, so he tries to scrub off as little speed as possible. As he brakes less, keeps the revs up until he exits the corner like a druid of wrath. Look at these bends. Look how he's controlling the speed. Look how he's controlling his rotation. Suzuka is one of his favorites and is truly one of mine too. Although sometimes he does induce tire slip. If need be, he'd induce it by instinct, creating enough rotation for the corner. Then he calms it down on the brakes as he is nearly on the trajectory toward the apex. He doesn't need as much rotation, so he tries to scrub off as little speed as possible. As he brakes less, keeps the revs up until he exits the corner like a druid of wrath. Look at these bends. Look how he's controlling the speed. Look how he's controlling his rotation. Suzuka is one of his favorites and is truly one of mine too. The way Ayrton controlled the throttle in stabs and not in one modulated hold on the throttle made it easier to maintain the desired tire chemistry. And he anticipates everything better since the road is changing if he hits a damp spot, while he's constantly in this game of modulating by stabbing and controlling the center of balance while the tires are being handled at their perfect chemistry. Keiichi Tsuchiya also does the same thing. If you want to control the throttle perfectly modulating from entry to exit, you'd need 100% surety of tire chemistry perfection, and your initiation would need to be aggressive enough to immediately start in the sweet spot. But it's very hard to control the throttle like that. And also, Senna wants his center of balance forward, so he needs the brakes. So Senna rather chooses to stab the throttle, and guess what? He does it so efficient. It's as good as perfect throttle modulation, all because of one thing. He feels his car and he listens to it. Center of rotation, center of balance, tire chemistry, throttle and brake are perfectly synced in his brain, that he controls his Mclaren perfectly by instinct. He acts on what he feels. It's as simple as that. Sometimes he'd skid the rear wheels for extreme rotation. Sometimes he'd be more gentle. Sometimes he'd hardly stab the throttle. Sometimes he'd just be stabbing with no brakes. But with this amazing technique that controls center of balance and rotation came a side effect. Instant power. Whether it's a 1,500, 600, 700 horsepower turboed engine or a naturally aspirated V12 with zero lag, his technique made him stay at the perfect RPM to never bog down. His turbos would be perfectly spooled up if there were any. And for the exits, he controlled his engine and his tire chemistry so well that he totally controlled the RPM of the wheels with the engine while still keeping them tires at the perfect sweet spot to deform to full potential and not skid like mad, so he could put all his power down. This often gave the illusion that his car was a four-wheel drive. That's how fast he exits. Yeah, Fujiwara's zone was first done by a Brazilian. Sorry guys, Takumi learned from Senna. You know Bunta Fujiwara? Yeah, he was friends with Ayrton. But the reason I love Senna so much is because his driving fundamentals are just plain perfection. He has such a close and deep connection to his car that he knows how to drive every single corner only from what his car tells him. He uses throttle and brake technique, but he also uses understeer rotation and so many other techniques because he has a connection to his car. He could do anything he wanted. Hit an apex after entering too fast, acing awkward corners like it's more than a breeze. It's more like a passion. Evidence of that, he's King of Monaco. He controlled the car as if it was one of his limbs. And I'm sure you can see that by all of this, Senna would be the boss of the Torge if he ran on it. I mean, hell, he won 3 times at Imola. He won 6 times in Monaco. Let's make that 7. Oh, and remember, in the 70s and in the early 80s, those Formula 1 cars, the engines were mid-rear mounted. And there was a transaxle in the rear position, just like all the modern day Ferraris. I talk in another video of how this throws off handling, that a transaxle is such a piece of trash. But it was no problem for Senna. Yes, of course, the cars with no transaxle, but rather the gearbox mounted in front of the rear axle and behind the engine were much more balanced and was much faster. He won the championships with the McLaren. McLaren dominated. Ferrari clinged onto the transaxle for the longest time, and that's partly why they sucked. But Ayrton performed an art on these cars, his Tolman and his Lotus. Ayrton's technique suited it. Controlling the center of balance, the transaxle wouldn't create an unstable seesaw of excessive weight transfer. Rather, he had it locked in. And as he is rotating, the inertial weight torque of the gearbox would actually make the tires laterally deform more. He rotated to the desired level he wanted and nothing less. In the early 70s, when Senna was driving his Lotus and his Tolman, if we're talking about driver to driver, the only reason he didn't win championships that time was because of his cars. They were terribly unreliable, and they were not nearly the fastest. Okay, cut Lotus some slack, they were fast, but let's be honest, McLaren were the GOATs. Scenes of wonder we're gonna go through. Let's analyze some more driving. We already talked about Senna's technique, his braking, and the fact that he doesn't need a trail brake. Well, one trick he really perfected in defending is called the chop. When he's side by side with an opponent, even if the opponent is slightly in front of him, they come to a fast bend or a slow corner, anything that has an angle, he wouldn't brake. He would just turn in aggressively, chopping his opponent off, shutting the door right in front of their nose and take the corner flat out. He doesn't need to trail brake, he'll rotate later. Another trick that was very similar that he mastered was the invite chop. When there's an opponent behind him trying to overtake, he'd sit on the outside inviting them to take a lunge down the inside, and his timing was absolutely perfect for them to take the bait, but for him to be fast enough that it's almost guaranteed the opponent who's making the lunge will outbrake himself, understeer into oblivion. And then Senna would chop it because he's entering the corner from the better line. So what he can do is just go flat out and then rotate later. Or like he did to PK, a switchback. He was also a master of blocking on the line, keeping his pace while defending hard, legal weaving. In the end, he'd be taking the racing line. But Senna also had some legal dirtiness he performed. He squeezed the life out of his opponents, giving them the most awkward line until they had no choice but to back out. This is Ayrton's suffocation. But unlike Max Verstappen, he did it properly as an aggressive art. They didn't chase them off the track and get a penalty for it. To put it the most simply, he made Silverstone feel like a one-laned Monaco because he could take any awkward line, any tightness. So what he'd do is just squeeze his opponents. Although yes, one or two times there was contact and it ended badly. But most of the time, all he'd be doing is making the most awkward line for his opponents that his opponents couldn't handle, but he could. He would choke the life out of them. Slow death, cruelest thing. But it wasn't just the fact that he could pull off this technique that made him so fast and made him able to do all these tricks. It was because of who Senna is. Do you see what I'm getting at? He developed a determination and a concentration like a viper. It wasn't his technique that gave him those championships and made him such a fast driver. It was the fact that he asked his crew, engineer, whoever was by him when he was about to race, to make his seatbelts tighter. You tell me, Jesse, this is totally irrelevant and stupid. Why are you talking about this? What's tighter seatbelts gonna do? It made him feel the car better. Senna's goal was not to make his technique the most famous all over social media and the headline and look the fastest. He felt his car and did whatever his car told him to do. Ayrton always used the throttle and brake technique, but he tuned it for the car he drove. The fact is, that technique was holistically good, with its fundamentals providing the needed output. Although Ayrton's technique was very suitable to the rain, if you think that's the reason he was good in the rain, you've totally missed the point. Ayrton became the rain master, not because he had the technique for it. You think Senna was born a rain master? He wasn't. From small racing in rain, he sucked. He fell for rain, and when you fall for rain, it's a hard fall. But he had a determination to get better. He had an attitude against weakness. He wanted to get to know the rain that he fell for, and so he sharpened his skills until he grabbed rain by a hair and made her dance with him. And so he honed an innate feel for rain, a love language of rain that only Ayrton knew. He danced with rain where others could only fall for her, made his weakness into his strength. Mixed conditions were no problem. Oh, but the best was when it was pouring. pouring in showers, rivers, streams of water, when he totally had the inferior car against Nigel Mansell. Yet he just played with him as if he was his own daft dog, until too many people were crashing, including Mansell who crashed, and then Senna was like, okay, I'm tired of playing this game, let's end the race. It's not even funny. Listen to what he said about this race.
I don't think that was a race, first of all, because it was just a matter of staying on the circuit, and it was not a point to try to go quick at all, and it was impossible. We had a race, very bad one here a couple of years ago, and then was impossible, and today was even worse. There was even more water on the back straight, and you could see that all cars were flying away, flying off, hitting the wall, and surely if I was in the lead I had a little more visibility and I could take my time to make sure I would stay on the circuit, but it was just one of those things. I managed to stay on the circuit, but it wasn't a race at all.
His first win in Portugal in the Lotus. The rain was pouring down hard on the track, super wet conditions. And in total, there were 16 DNFs. And the only driver that Ayrton Senna did not manage to overlap was Michele Alboreto. But the gap between him and Senna was 62.978 seconds. And from Nigel Mansell down, the drivers were overlapped more than once. Yes, it was easy to weight control his center of balance and center of rotation, squeeze in any gap he wants, control the grip of all four tires. He used this technique in the rain and it was splendid. It was a really good technique to use in the rain. But the reason he's the rain master is because he knew rain. But I think one of the greatest moments of Senna's whole life, I mentioned that Ayrton can control his weight and tire chemistry so well, like an octopus trying to get through the eye of a cotton needle. Toge Master, Monaco 7-time winner. Now put that and rain together. 1984 Monaco Grand Prix. The car Ayrton was driving was the equivalent of a Kick Sauber today. On the most demanding, twisty mountain pass like fluid track with pouring rain, Ayrton sped like a firebird, killing everyone so fast they didn't even get to see their lives flash before their eyes. From 13th place to what should have been a win for how fast he was catching Alain Prost, he beat Nigel Mansell. He beat Nelson Piquet in a Tolman. He beat Niki Lauda, one of the greatest drivers in all of racing, who was driving the greatest car in Formula 1, the McLaren. Yeah, Ayrton beat him in a Tolman because they were racing on Gunsai Torge and it was raining, so Ayrton got the advantage. You'd need to cheat to beat Ayrton at Monaco in the rain, which kind of did happen. Balestri was getting uneasy that Senna was catching Prost so rapidly, and as soon as Alain wanted to stop the race, he got his request. The red flag and the checkered flag came out. Prost stopped by the flag just before the finish line. Senna was the first one to cross the finish line, but then so that Prost wins, they counted it on the previous lap. And you tell me, oh, Senna also wanted to stop a rainy race. Okay, firstly, Nigel Mansell, who was his only competition, crashed, then was riding on his own. Senna wanted to stop the race to protect the other people who didn't crash yet, because he knew he was the only one who could stay on the track. But although I say that Senna wasn't the king of the rain because of his technique, the fact that he was constantly 100% in the realm of four-wheel steer, center of rotation balancing, he got used to the minor slip and slide at the limit. I mean, he induced it. He was rotating, controlling the grip of all four tires, meaning he anticipated any sort of slipping before it happened. He had an insane feel. In mixed conditions, oh, that's when he was supreme. None of his driving was luck. It was the fact that he listened to his car, that he was so fast. Can you please get this? As long as his car called for it, he understeer rotated. He used his throttle brake technique. He trail braked hard and deep into the corner. He glided in with no inputs. If you don't like the idea, oh, I must listen to my car, always just listen to my car. Well, guess what? Your car has the same intentions of you. Go the fastest possible around the corner. If you use the exact same technique that you use in a McLaren, in a Honda Civic, it would be trash. Talking about road cars, you know what happened when all Formula 1 drivers are driving the same road car on a track? Ayrton won. And he also helped produce the greatest road car of all time, the Honda NSX R. This is how he was truly one step ahead of everyone. He was. But then Jesse, how does he only have 3 championships and not 9? If he's the best, then he should have walked over Alain Prost and Michael Schumacher. Michael Schumacher absolutely walked past him when he joined F1. Okay, first of all, he did not walk past him. Let's start at the beginning. There's a lot I need to get clear. Right at the beginning of Ayrton's Formula 1 career. It's more like a mission. He didn't have a career, he was on a mission. Ayrton started his mission with an overwhelming ambition and determination to win races and championships by unreal margins. He wanted to show that he's the GOAT. That's why he needed to win at unreal margins. Every time he got into a car, he wasn't like Alain Prost, doing methodically whatever would get him just the right points to win the championship in an overwhelmingly overpowered car. Senna wanted to show that he is something special. As we know, in 1984, he started with Tolman. And then in 1985, he signed for Lotus, who gave his car enough power to bring down the Eiffel Tower. But whoa, why are we moving to 1985? Let's stay on track. Ayrton is a fast driver, but we don't need to take the video fast. If we take it that fast, we're gonna miss a lot. Senna's first Grand Prix race in Brazil, his home course. The pressure was the highest for his first race. Not just for him, but for him to make all Brazil turn their cheers from Nelson Piquet to him. Remember, Nelson Piquet was the home favorite. 3-time Brazilian world champion. That's Piquet. And he was far more experienced than Ayrton Senna. He was riding with Niki Lauda and them. He was older. Not old, just older. Senna knew who the fans were cheering for. But he was absolutely pumped and ready. The adrenaline was pumping. So pumped he was that he took all the cheers for himself. It just motivated him more. Regardless that at the time Lotus and Mclaren were dominating, Ayrton did not care about the rules of speed and physics. He did what he could to win. That's who Senna is. The race starts. Nelson Piquet, the home favorite, stalls his car. Alboreto goes into the lead. Guess what happens to Ayrton Senna? He retires because of turbo failure. But not all hope is lost. There's still another race coming up, in South Africa in fact. And he did a respectable finish in 6th place. In Belgium he also took a 6th place finish. He DNF'd again. I'm sure he didn't like it, but his determination only grew stronger. Hating losing and analyzing why all of this was happening. Remember that he has a stoic focus for analyzing. The next race was coming, would be the one that changed his life. Monaco. The most demanding track, as we already know. He started 13th on the grid and finished first, or should have. Yeah, but do you know how crazy this is? In Britain and Portugal, he finished 3rd. That would make 3 podiums for the year and a whole lot of DNFs. He got an attention flag on him for that year, and that was a good thing. That was what he needed, because he was not content with 1984. So in 1985, he moved to Lotus. Although Lotus did drift a bit back to the middle of the grid, not dominating as they used to. Lotus got 3 wins for 1985. 2 of them were from Senna. The spectacular massacre in Portugal that we already talked about, where the only driver that he didn't lap was over 60 seconds behind him. This race at Portugal proved that 1984 Monaco Grand Prix was not just a fluke, and his other win was in Belgium. But put a careful eye on 1984 still, the Monaco Grand Prix. Senna was pissed off at the FIA for putting him 2nd and not 1st, but this was also the place where Ayrton and Alain met. In Portugal, it was just reinstated. Ayrton started becoming a threat to Alain. They were the first few sprinkles of rivalry, starting one of the greatest stories in all of history. Senna was driving his Lotus like a man possessed throughout the year, with only one burning desire: to massacre everyone on the track. But the Lotus fell short of handling his hard driving. 9 DNFs out of 16 races. 9! Although the others, there were 6 podiums, and of the 6 there were 2 wins. Following year there were more finishes. There were 9 out of 16. He swapped it around. Let's go! And only one of those finishes was off the podium, in 5th place. But in Monaco, he got a 3rd place. Deja vu. Monaco definitely had a crush on him. But once again, he had his work cut out for him. He studied and analyzed everything, and he knew what he had to do. Although the car still wasn't the best. Hell, in Italy, he had a DNS. did not start. That's just pitiful. Only Ferraris do that.
No, 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 no. The gearbox, guys.
But Senna, through all of this, just got better and better, and so did his car. His presence and performance, not just on track but also off track in the garage. He would stay till late in the garage with his engineers, trying to work out problems, give feedback of the driving, be there for his crew. I mean, he's the racing driver. He did what he can to make his Lotus a winning car, and his diligence paid off. In 1987, he got what he worked for, winning Monaco. And this also marked the beginning of another great, spectacular story. And Monaco was blushing. Ayrton gained victory at Monaco, proving his worth was far greater than others thought. That year he came third in Drivers' Championship, behind Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell. And this gave him bitter feeling. He lost. The people around him accused him of being crazy. Senna, you just came third in a Lotus and it's your 4th season. But Ayrton knew what he really wanted. What is for sure is he got only more determined. And he made sure to not lose again. 1988, Senna signs with McLaren and wins. He wins the championship first time at McLaren by 3 points ahead of his main rival, Alain Prost. Oh yeah, those two I mentioned earlier, they're in the same team now. We will get to the rivalry. Prost was 46 points ahead of Gerhard Berger in his Ferrari. Constructors was even worse though, with McLaren winning 15 out of 16. McLaren Honda earned 199 points. Ferrari got 65, Benetton Ford 39, and Lotus Honda, now without Senna, a mere 23 points. 23 points. Ayrton and Alain had an absolute dogfight. It was a close year. They already knew they're gonna beat everyone else, so they were versing each other. To be absolutely clear, these were the wins of the 1988 championship. Alain, Ayrton, Alain, Alain, Ayrton, Ayrton, Alain, Ayrton, 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 Gerhard Berger? What? In a Ferrari? Alain, Alain, Ayrton, Alain. But where Ayrton dropped a bombshell on Alain was in Monaco. He had a different feeling in this race. He was on his #1 mission, apart from all the others. He wasn't versing Alain, he wasn't versing the other drivers, he was versing himself. And from the start to the finish, Ayrton turned from human to program. He was lapping opponents and leaving Alain beyond the dust. Nah, Alain. He already beat you in the Monaco Grand Prix. He was seeking perfection. That's the truth. Then Ron Dennis, with his nerves of a mother, telling Ayrton to slow down in case he makes a mistake, in case the car can't handle it. What? The McLaren MP44 can't handle? Can't handle what? A bomb. Ayrton ignored him because he was on his mission. Ayrton snapped out of his zone for a few milliseconds from the Dennis distraction and he crashed. Hal Dennis, you clut. Look what you've done. Okay, hold on right there. I need to be critical. Being a good driver is not only about speed. If you can make it past this one corner that's right in front of you at 2 billion kilometers per hour. Being a fast driver also demands being safe at high speed. Being comfortable at high speed and having full control over the car you're driving, where you can still anticipate things, where the margin is not too small and you can correct a mistake. Basically, what I'm saying is you need to get to a level where 200 miles per hour around a corner feels like 180 and you can handle the car easier. Anticipate a bullet flying your way and dodge it like a cat in the road. Hell, some people can't even dodge a cat without flipping their car. Look man, I'm choosing to be critical of Ayrton. This is the truth about speed. You can't ignore it. At such a high speed he was going, he was about to lap Alain, who was a hell of a good driver. And in the same car. I'm afraid that at that time, for Ayrton, that speed demanded his full concentration and nothing less. Dennis, you clut. So my critical view is true, but let's cut Senna some slack. He shifted from human to program, but in actual fact, that's just a figure of speech. He's still a human. Senna achieved greatness that day regardless of his crash. The speed he was going around Monaco with perfect tire grip management, perfect weight control. His rotation was perfect. His overtaking at Monaco was like any other drivers overtaking at Silverstone. He made everything look easy to all the other drivers. But one big memorable moment was at Suzuka Grand Prix. It was the decider. On the day where Ayrton needed his MP4 for the most in order to write his championship in stone, well, his car wouldn't take off. He stalled. So he was overtaken by everyone. Well, not everyone, but almost everyone. So he was chilling in 13th place. And as soon as his engine started back up again and he could take off, a bomb exploded. He knew that this was his last chance. He went on beast mode. Top speed driving, height of aggression, mixed with the finest racecraft. The rain also invited herself to help. He overtook every single driver in front of him until eventually threading the world's smallest needle, overtaking Alain Prost to win the Japanese Grand Prix. On the race that mattered most, Ayrton gave his best performance. He was determined and he got what he fought for. But things wouldn't be the same for long. Because Ayrton and Alain, you can say they were on the same level. Regardless of who's better, you can't make Ayrton or Alain a second driver. It's impossible.
We will have good fun from now on.
Maybe we fight outside the car.
I think it's gonna get more and more exciting, the championship.
Is it possible to be equal in the championship?
No.
Shit.
Can only be one winner.
Same thing of what's happening now between Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. It is so similar. This is crazy. Fred could not have put more pressure on his drivers than he has. It's impossible. And I see the pressure with every centimeter of driving that Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton drive. There's just something extra. If you can't see it, you're blind. This is the reason Australia was a mess. It's not simply because they had the car set wrong. I mean, that might be the main factor, but the pressure's definitely contributing to it. China was also crazy. This is gonna be a tense year. And the heat and excitement is only gonna get higher. This might just be my favorite season of modern Formula One. As for the races, well, my favorite race of modern Formula One, 2024 Baku. All that is on those two drivers' minds is driving, if possible, past their full potential to prove their points now. Because everything is riding on every move of theirs. Whether Hamilton or Leclerc wins the championship was riding on pre-testing. This is why Hamilton and Leclerc both had their moments. I remember after watching the Australian Grand Prix of 2025, afterward it felt like I woke up from a nightmare. And what it means to win the championship just makes it worse. Hamilton's first year for Ferrari to win his 8th, or actually 9th to be fair, and Leclerc's first ever. They're both special championships. Both have had their time of waiting. They want it now. So whether they're going to have the best year or the worst year of their lives, riding on their driving. With Ayrton and Alain, though, on the other hand, well, it was more like a constant battle throughout the years. It wasn't choosing who's going to be the number 1 and number 2 driver. They were just both number 1s. 1989 turned out to be quite different to 1988. Catastrophically different. Although it wasn't different is McLaren Honda's domination. See what happens when you get a Japanese engine? Ha ha ha, lol. This 1989 championship was a little more competitive than 88. It wasn't just McLaren's winning left, right and center. And 1 or 2 times that was actually Senna and Prost's fault. We will get into the details. But the 1989 championship was the alpha of the Cold War. It was like nothing else. And it started something that went through the years. And we're still talking about it right now in 2025. Adrenaline is pumping. We meet at Brazil for the first race. And to all of our surprise, guess what? A Ferrari starts the year on a note of winning. Nigel Mansell wins the first race at Brazil. What happened to Senna? Oh well, he took a 3-way lunge and then, yeah, that happened. Next race, we come to Imola. Imola. It was a rough start. And at the Tamburello corner, Gerhard Berger crashed. His car spun a few times, it was totally wrecked, caught on fire, but he was quickly taken to the hospital and he was fine. And then the race restarted. Alain got a much better launch than Senna, but then into the bend after Tamburello, just before the hairpin, Senna makes a move coming from the outside and then coming to the inside for the hairpin, takes the position away from Prost. This might just seem like two teammates fighting, but the fact is, Ayrton and Alain made an agreement. They can overtake other drivers, but between them, for the first lap, there is no overtaking allowed, for the sake of risk. And Alain immediately complained that Senna broke the rule. I mean, he did, right? But now Senna, in his understanding, was like, oh, but it was the restart. The first lap was already over. That one that Gerhard crashed on. Playing stupid to Alain. And this caused a mighty fight for the rest of the season. Come Monaco, and Alain is absolutely tailgating Senna on Senna's second home course, Monaco. But then after a while, Senna pulls away by 50 seconds, winning the race. He also wins in Mexico. Then Alain finally broke through with his first win in the USA. But then hello, look who's back. Rain came in an attempt to save Ayrton Senna, letting him win another race. But then his engine blew up, so Thierry Boutsen won. Next race in France, Senna had gearbox problems. Alain won, and he started getting into a rhythm. He was strong and determined. Great Britain, he won there too. Then Germany, Ayrton won. Hungary, look who's back. Nigel Mansell. In Belgium, it decided to rain, and guess what? Ayrton won. Italy, Alain Prost. Portugal, anyway, Gerhard Berger won. For the Spanish Grand Prix, Ayrton Senna. Ferrari definitely stepped up their game. Their drivers were on fire. But now coming to the last two races of the season, the pressure was 500 times higher because everything was at stake for these last two races. If Ayrton DNFs Suzuka, well then Alain wins the championship. If Ayrton wins Suzuka and Australia, he wins the championship. Both Ayrton and Alain soaked the pressure like a sponge. For the race, they dominated. Alain got a much better start than Senna. First and second, away from the grid. From the beginning to middle, Ayrton was quite a distance from Alain until he went in combat mode. Ayrton was brutally passing back markers to get to Alain, and so close near the end of the race, he was on Alain's bumper. Coming to the super slow chicane before the last corner of the racetrack, Senna goes do it or die. He lunges down the inside from 5 kilometers back. They're about to lift off the brakes and turn into the corner. Side by side they are. Alain has a short time to see Ayrton that he did not anticipate, but he sees him. In the early part of the braking zone, Ayrton was going razor sharp between Alain and the grass. They come closer to the corner, they both go wide. It's the usual racing stuff to enter from wide, especially for a chicane. They both had enough space to go side by side through the chicane. So you think that's what they did? Nope. Alain intentionally forgets that Ayrton is there, takes the racing line, crashed.
Oh my goodness, this is fantastic!
Ayrton's car wasn't too bad. Alain immediately got out of his car. Maybe he stalled his engine, or maybe he was like, okay, I already won the championship, we both crashed. Or maybe his car was just too bad. Maybe he was just pissed off. He got out of his car. Senna didn't. Senna convinced the marshals to push him back onto the track. They started pushing him backwards, and he immediately was like, no, push me forwards through the escape zone. This escape zone is if you outbrake yourself, or you don't have any brakes at all. Then these soft barriers would stop you. So Senna rather took the escape road instead of causing a crash with another racer who was actually going at the racing speed. It's basic racing etiquette. But the truth is,
Senna is trying to get back to the race.
If he cuts the chicane, he might incur a 5-second penalty. He'll make up for it, he'll pass the Nini and pull away.
Do you have the regulations?
Nani?
after Senna showed spectacular driving and car control with the lack of downforce on the front end, truth is he needed a wing. So he pitted, got a new one, drops to second place. And then Senna passed Nannini in the exact same place, in the exact same way, super late lunge that he passed Alain Prost. He showed that he could do it perfectly fine. It was totally illegal move, just aggressive, quite a very late lunge. from the lion, and he won the race. But while Ayrton was overtaking people, Alain was talking to his daddy, Balestri, John Murray Balestri, firstly accusing Ayrton of going through the barriers, then also accusing his reckless driving. Too aggressive, uncalculated, dirty, reckless driving. And here's how this worked. In the end, Alain used politics to get Ayrton disqualified from the race, stealing the chances of winning the championship away from him. You ask me, how did he do this? Okay, well, firstly, you see, because Ayrton could control the car at any awkward angle, he could take corners at high speed, he could launch and still hit an apex. We already talked about his amazing technique and insane feel for the car. Now this, along with his strong fighting spirit of aggression, it had a big impact on opponents. Although it was all covered with precision and high calculation, he was aggressive. It's not right or wrong, it's characteristic. He was extremely aggressive. I'm also aggressive. Senna would sometimes lunge his opponents so fast that they couldn't anticipate it. Senna pulled off chops. Senna did the invite chops. Senna had many aggressive moves to offend and defend. He took gaps that others wouldn't dare. Basically, he built himself a rep of extreme aggression and precision. And to those who lost to him by that and didn't like it, they were hurt. Now what Alain did is twist his aggressive precision into dirty, unsportsmanlike driving. And he was so close to Balestri, he was basically his own dad, and Balestri is the boss in charge. Balestri wanted Alain to win. So what happened was, instead of just getting a 5-second penalty for going through the barriers, Ayrton was counted as not anticipating in the Japanese Grand Prix. Damn, that must have hurt. He's basically saying, Ayrton, you're a dead man to me. And he had the power to. He disqualified Senna, and this dropped Senna's chances of winning the championship. It was over. Alain won his 3rd title. Gone. Finished. You're done, Senna. What a bombshell. This is what he got for taking the gap impossible. One of the most precision lunges that would have ended good. They really could have just gone side by side, see who comes out first on the other side. Or Alain could have slipped behind him, keep his momentum, get him on the last curve before the finish line. Proof that Senna was not dirty. I mean, just look at this. He pulled off the exact same move. Copy and paste. Worked out perfectly. And you can say, oh, well, the driver immediately slipped behind Senna. If he had stayed side by side with Senna, they would have crashed. First of all, Senna is the king of Monaco. So it's not like he's not able to squeeze through small gaps, take awkward corners. Second, when Senna pushes an opponent wide, squeezes them on the track, he doesn't behave like Max Verstappen, pushing over track limits. Ayrton might be dangerously aggressive and hard, but he is totally fair. If he is racing himself, there wouldn't be any contact. But every single corner would be a razor sharp, probably 1/10 of a millimeter close, near contact moments. The stoic focus of analysis that Senna has to even feel the road. He has the same thing in his driving. So Alain intentionally crashed into Senna. Alain could do this because his reputation season was next level gentle. Where he made moves was mostly on the straight. He waited patiently behind an opponent and set himself up for the most easy, safe overtake before he overtook him. It's just difference, personality. So because Alain's rep is gentle, the blame of this crash could easily be thrown onto Senna. So yeah, Alain used politics to defeat Senna. John Alesi overtook Senna. Look how Senna handled it. It was the same aggression as Senna in 1989, Suzuka. But because Prost managed to play his chess pieces perfectly to the T in the game of politics, he got set in checkmate. 1989 world champion Alain Prost. The race after Suzuka was Australia, but after this massive fight that ended up in Senna losing everything he worked for, something strange happened. The great performance he showed throughout the season, it was off. Alain Prost, scared of the rain, decided to only go for a few laps and then pit. DNF on purpose. Ouch. That is the most insulting way to say, I don't need to beat you anymore, Ayrton. The rain came down very aggressively. It was pouring. So Senna should have the advantage, right? He's the king of the rain. But rather, he spun out and then he crashed. What is going on? In 1989, for the time Senna DNF'd, it was always a mechanical issue. Only once in an incident with Nigel Mansell, they both went into the gravel. But now, what is going on? Ayrton was massacred by the system in 1989 and many other times, as we know. For Christmas, healing his wounds from his disqualification and fine for going through the escape zone and for performing so-called reckless driving. He was done. For this year, 1990, Ayrton purposed to play reverse card. He said, this time it will be my way. Time for them to get massacred. He was absolutely out for blood. Once again, the Japanese Grand Prix was the championship decider. This time, if Alain Prost didn't finish, then Senna wins the championship. I don't think Ayrton was ever more determined than in this season. All the drivers have a meeting. The old man hints back at 1989 Suzuka and relative moments, saying that dangerous driving will be punished. Then Nelson had something logical to say.
It was a big last year with the Ayrton. Why we have to repeat the same thing? The safe thing is, if you miss your king, the steward stop you. I have no traffic, let you go. If you have to turn around and go backwards against another car, that's much danger.
Everybody feels that way?
Yeah.
So going through the barriers just wasn't allowed for Senna, but now for everyone else it was.
It's a joke. What happened last year, it's a joke. You just prove here, I said nothing, and you see somebody raising the point, and you see everybody agreeing. And last year was really bad for me. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Ayrton qualifies the fastest, giving him pole, but he doesn't actually start on pole. They give him the dirty side of the track to start on. Ayrton appeals this, and they deny him. They start the race. Alain gets ahead by a few. They're coming onto the bend. They're heading toward the first corner. At first, he's staying on the inside, defending Senna, but then he shifts far wide for the racing line, giving Senna the gap. Senna says, hold my helmet, I'm taking that gap. Alain once again attempts to close the door in mid-corner. Crash! Most brutal way into the sand pit. Ayrton Senna wins 1990 world title. This was by far the most brutal moment in Formula 1. Ayrton knew if Alain doesn't finish, he wins the championship. And this is how he got victory. Alain was defending like this. He was simply fed up with Ayrton's sheer speed and extreme aggression. So he countered Senna's aggression with a crash bait defending. He knew it'd be fine because he was buds with Balestri and he had a good rep.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
When Senna made this famous statement, if you no longer go for the gap, you're no longer a racing driver. Later on, he told Jackie that he was lying. He was lying, but also telling the truth. I will show you why. In saying if you no longer go for the gap, you're no longer a racing driver, he was telling the truth because that's how he raced. He took gaps that no others would dare. He did all he can to win and nothing less. In 1989, he took the gap that existed. Though small, it was right there. When he said that Alain opened the gap, and he took that gap. Now how we know he's lying, in 1990, he knew Alain. He knew the gap Alain gave him wasn't a true gap to get in front of Alain. It was Alain. He knew he was going to close the gap, but he took it anyway. He took that gap to kill Alain. That's it. Alain countered Ayrton's aggression with politics and crash fake defending, and so Ayrton walked into it knowing what was gonna happen, knowing what he was getting into. He was countering Alain's counter with the crash. He wasn't gonna bend for Alain. Why should he? He rather ended it quick. Alain Prost played with Ayrton Senna's reputation, while Senna played with Prost's life. That's 1989 and 1990. But let me just get one thing clear. I did accuse Alain of using balestri to get an easy win for 1989, but I do not hate Alain. He's one of my favorite Formula 1 drivers actually, and he is an absolute genius. Not just a genius, he's a good driver too. He's a 4-time world champion, not for nothing. I'm just talking about what happened in 89 and 90. We are going to get into Alain's driving in a separate video. I'm not just going to include a whole lot in this video of Alain and say I've done a video on Ayrton and Alain. Alain deserves his own video, just like Ayrton deserves his own. This is the one about Ayrton. Alain is in the storyline, so I am including him, but I'm gonna make a whole separate video just for Alain. These are two drivers that are definitely in a league of their own. Oh, and guess what? You think Ayrton and Alain hated each other? The media makes everything 5 billion times worse than it really is. Ayrton and Alain became really close friends. When it comes to who's the better driver, well, that's a different story. We'll get to that. We've been on that. Let's finish this video and then we wait for Alain's video. Both Ayrton and Alain have my respect, and both of them should have yours too. Remember, every single driver, champion or not, had their respectable moments and their not respectable moments. I'm just saying. But 1989, why did that strange thing happen in Australia? He was on peak performance and then he just dropped. Senna is the king of the rain. Why did Senna absolutely bottle it? It's like he wasn't there. Well, that's because he wasn't. You see, Ayrton Senna has such an insane feel. He is the king of the rain. He made his weakness into his strength. He has a stoic 100% disciplined focus for analysis before and after racing. While racing, he is a demon. But why sometimes is he as helpless as a tortoise turned on his back? I keep alluding to the fact that Ayrton made his weakness into his strength. But the truth is, from young, there was one weakness. It was like an invisible brick wall in front of Ayrton Senna that he didn't think was a problem. He didn't even know it was a brick wall in front of him. It was invisible. Because in the right circumstances, this was actually his strength. But in the wrong circumstances, because he didn't care to fix it, it was the one little monster. It ended up getting bigger and better than him. It was the giant in his life, the Goliath, that he did not care to defeat. It might have been the reason he won 1990, but the fact is, it's also the reason he spun out in 89 Australia, and it's the same reason that he lost 1992. It ruled his life. It ruled all his decisions, all his actions. It ruled whether he was feeling the car properly or not. When the Cold War was going on, Ayrton had a perfect Mclaren, same performance level as Alain Prost. He had all the motivation from the last year, and with unbreakable determination, he did it. It's what brought him through the 1984 Grand Prix at Monaco, Lotus, 1988. He's been a champion. You see, by 1991, Senna himself said that the hardest championship he won was 1991. His Mclaren was very good performing. It had sufficient power, but it had H pattern 3-pedal manual transmission, while everyone else was using sequentials. And to be fair, Williams managed to make a really good all-around car. Benetton was not bad. The Williams was a giant to face, but Ayrton still had a good car that could compete with the Williams, though disadvantaged in some ways. I want you to think about this while we are talking. What is this thing that we're talking about that was Senna's strength and weakness? We need to take another look at one very important thing. We need to take another look at Senna's technique and driving style. We already covered this in the first part, but we're re-delving into this for a reason. You see, from the 90s and on, especially mid-90s and on, Formula 1 cars started getting more downforce. Suspension was made better, and there was just more grip. The cars were more peaky. Ayrton Senna listened to the cars he drove, and with the cars getting more peaky, more grippy, and more refined, well, he saw the need to fine-tune his technique to fit the car he drove in pursuit of top speed. Senna's technique was to enter the corner too fast, used throttle and brake technique to rotate the car from mid-corner, from start to finish, constantly inducing rotation. And he had quite a big steering angle in mid-corner, not scrubbing, no unnecessary understeer, as he was constantly feeling the limit of the front tire's grip, and he balanced the center of rotation perfectly, making the rear wheels and the front wheels do their job. And then at exits where he doesn't need as aggressive rotation, he would just be stabbing the throttle. And while he's stabbing, using just the acceleration to rotate, he's also feeling the rear tires until he floors it. But the timing of when he floors it would intentionally be just before there's enough grip, because you can accelerate faster this way. It's the same reason when you launch a car off the line, you want a little bit of tire slip, but not a mad burnout that goes nowhere. You want it to be in the perfect margin for the engine to control the RPM of the wheels and not bog down to the RPM of the wheels when they're not spinning. But you want to modulate the acceleration perfectly so that you have enough grip. You can deform the tires enough so the tires will grab the road and throw it behind at the speed your engine is going, not the other way around. Max Verstappen also floors it like this, just without stabbing on the throttle. He rather floors and modulates. He obviously did this because it's the fastest way, but he also did this to enhance his God-given innate feel to another level. See, when he was stabbing the throttle, it would give him more feedback on the rear tire's grip. What he was doing was giving his nerves more data to enhance his already insane feel. So he didn't leave one bit of acceleration on the table. All the potential was slammed onto the road. It's the total opposite of overconfident presumption. He took absolute advantage of his talent. You see, being fast is also about being smart. And it's not like you'd learn something new if I told you Ayrton has 5 billion IQ. But like I said, in 1991, his driving style kind of changed. Ayrton kept his technique throughout his life, but he fine-tuned it for the car he drove. And by 1991 is when we saw a little change, a little fine-tuning in his driving. Now he rather angled his car better for the corner, adjusting the trajectory, and dived into the corner deeper and faster, needing less rotational angle in mid-corner due to the trajectory adjustment at entry. He just glides through the corner. And with this dive, he'd enter the corner and in no time he's already in mid-late corner. And that's where he would start stabbing the throttle, very much near exit, until he absolutely floors it. The new driving style he honed, it very much gives the impression of a V-line style. It looks like that from his input and the fact that he's diving deeper. But if you zoom out, his racing line isn't all that different. He's still sweeping through the corner, sustaining the G's. Just a little bit of a trajectory adjustment. Ayrton has been racing Nigel Mansell, Alain Prost, Jean Alesi, Gerhard Berger, all these drivers for a while. But I'm afraid Senna's heart might have skipped a beat at the appearance of this new legend. Who is this new legend? He's a youngster from Germany. He was racing for some slow, unreliable green toothpaste team. His first race he didn't even finish. But it came to pass when him and Senna met, and boy was it something. Schumacher left Jordan to go to Benetton, and that was one of the best moves of his life. It was like Senna in Lotus. It perfectly suited him for that time, and it was all worth it. The Italian Grand Prix, Senna and Schumacher had a glimpse of each other, but that was just Senna overtaking Schumacher after he got fresh tires. They didn't fight or anything. The real first time they encountered each other was at Spain. Senna decided to rather go on a defending rant, blocking Mansell and Schumacher, while Gerhard Berger spurts forward, growing a gap that was totally disrespected by his pit crew, being shrank down to nothing by some clutch trying to remove tape. The gap was 16 seconds and the pit stop was about 17 seconds. I'm just saying. But what was more concerning was Schumacher. In the first lap, he overtook Nigel Mansell down the inside, then went on to take Senna down the inside of the exit of the corner. But Senna fought back, defending his position on the inside of the next corner. Not so easy, Schumi. After Berger got eaten by his own pit crew and came out behind Senna, Senna let Berger through. He waved him through. His car was probably faster or something. Then it happened. Senna spun out and then rejoined But then later Schumacher, trying to catch Berger, also spun out and rejoined just behind Senna. Senna's speed was a little weird. I don't know what went wrong in this race. I don't know what happened. Some say his gearbox was limping. I'ma say nothing, except that Berger's McLaren retired. Alesi overtook Senna. Mansell won the race. Senna came 5th. Schumacher came 6th, but they exchanged impressions, and there was zero fear in Schumacher. He was not scared to overtake Senna, and he was putting up a worthy fight with some good maturity, amazing racecraft, and consistent speed. He had fast lap multiple times, amazing driving apart from his spin, but hey, cut him some slack for the spin. I mean, it was his 3rd race for Benetton. This new kid Schumi showed something rather scary, like the aura of a future champion. At Suzuka, Berger took the lead again, grew a 9-second gap while Ayrton kept Mansell at bay, and once again the championship was hanging on this race, the Japanese Grand Prix. And then Mansell crashed, but from what I see, it was a car issue and not his fault that he went violently to the left off the track. Later Ayrton started catching Berger, Ayrton dominated, then Berger got an exhaust problem, then on the last corner of the last lap, Ayrton let Berger through to win. He didn't need the point, so he rather let Berger win the race that he so well led and controlled from the start. But there was still something else. Senna had some important business to get through. Championship was won, but there was one more race at Adelaide, one of Senna's favorite tracks, and the rain was pouring. The rain came to see Ayrton. They had one last appointment for that year that they needed to show off. They needed to put Michael, Nigel and the Tifosi in their place. Senna started on pole position as was his custom, and he pulled away immediately. It's an art, finesse, by dialogue connection, where he found perfection, dancing with rain. Michael had crashed. Nigel Mansell, in an attempt to catch Ayrton, went on a flat-out spurt. He got close, shortened the gap, but that's all he could do before crashing. Berger also crashed. After a while, Ayrton was lifting his hands and waving to the marshals to stop the race, to stop the crashes. Too many people were crashing. Nigel Mansell was injured, and that was just another day that he showed us who rules. Come 1992 and Williams goes demonic in grip. They bring an all-new active suspension system, all made to maintain the highest level of grip, taking advantage of potential ground effects without bottoming out. Ultimate downforce that never stalls, and also good bump absorption. So the Williams was 10 times more stable, and the traction off the line and out of corners, well, it was perfect. Their speed was relentless. What else happened? Alain ran away to save face, because 1991 was a terrible season for him. But in 1992, a dark shadow fell over Senna, and it began to devour him, or it tried. The impression Senna got from the first practices and qualifiers, well, it was enough to shock him. However, Ayrton managed to out-qualify Patrese, starting second on the grid. But when it came to the Grand Prix, both Williams shot forward, pulling away immediately, so rapidly bullying their way past Senna and getting smaller and smaller away in the distance. But Senna wasn't leaving it at that. Not after 1991. He absolutely fought. And for a while, he managed to hold Patrese in the corners. But he couldn't. He just couldn't. The Williams were overpowered. He definitely left the track that day dumbfounded. He knew this year was going to be different. However, the Williams was not enough to shock Senna. In Mexico, Friday qualifying.
And because it's such a fast corner, it's going to make it mighty dangerous, because if you get on the marbles and you're in 5th or 6th gear, your history, you're going to go off. The bumps are terrible and you're fighting for control all the time, and I mean, it's not nice feeling because it's an accident waiting to happen all the time.
In Mexico, Friday qualifying, while Senna went over very sus bumps the wrong way, it unsettled his McLaren Honda and he got into a massive crash. He was in extreme pain, injured his leg. But then just the day after, on Saturday for qualifying, he got 6th on the grid. Then guess what happened in the race? Senna's transmission broke, sending him into the shadow realm. He didn't know what to do or to say, so he just decided to sit on the rocks. The best spectator seat, just watch the rest of the race. But it wasn't just watching the rest of the race. He was analyzing everything. He was looking at his own driving, the car, what the hell is going on, and taking the closest look at all other cars on the grid. The Mclaren just wasn't getting any better. It was on the trajectory downwards. Besides not even being fast enough, it was so unreliable. In Brazil, Senna and Schumacher meet again. You see, by this point, Senna sees what Schumacher is capable of. He sees that there's a possibility that he can race him, and he doesn't want that. He's trying to get his bearings on the car. He's trying to fight the Williams. So he plays a dirty trick on Schumacher. Senna decides to go awfully slow in the corners, but not slow enough for Schumacher to overtake. He's in the perfect speed window and he's blocking him. And then on the straights he immediately pull away, because he does have more power than the little Benetton. But the Benetton was really good in the corners. It was lighter. Senna did this to try and get Schumacher overtaken by someone behind. Schumacher managed to overtake Senna in a corner, but then Senna just got into Schumacher's slipstream and re-overtook him. They played this game until Senna's car decided it wasn't interested in working anymore. Electrical problems, again, sending him to the shadow realm. About Senna and Schumacher's little game they played in Brazil, well, let's say Schumacher wasn't really that happy about it. And he was talking about it in the interview as if it was deserving of a penalty. You know what, Schumacher, you should have just got past him and stayed past him. Remember, there was no contact. He didn't make you hit the wall. This is racing. First race he was slaughtered by Williams. His car tried to kill him. Then his car decided to disown him. Twice. What an amazing way to start a season. Come the Spanish Grand Prix, and qualifying was filled up with rain, and so was the race. Ayrton managed to qualify 3rd on the grid. The Grand Prix starts and he drops to 7th. What the hell is going on? But after the little funk at the start, Senna went on an overtaking spurt, passing Berger, Brundle. Berger trying to overtake a Lacey did a favor for Senna. He took him out. The rain came down harder, and guess who crashed? Patrese in the Williams. Patrese, how do you crash a 1992 Williams? I shall call you Checo. This is just unbelievable. I mean, you were given the best scenario for the year. Mansell leading the race like an absolute beast, pulling away from everybody. Michael was also doing amazing. Then Senna, the renowned rain master, trying to catch up. Well, he lost concentration and he spun out. He fell for the rain that he once danced with. Senna was reminded of the basic lesson he learnt as a kid. You need to respect rain if you want to dance with her. He rejoined the track, but then he crashed again. This time it was a real crash into the wall, and this time Senna lost to Schumacher. Senna just wasn't into it. There was no connection between him and his car. He couldn't perform the magic he did in the past. It's like he was paralyzed. Fighting Michael was one thing, but he knew he couldn't touch the Williams, and he was all the more pissed by the previous mechanical failures. The fact that McLaren Honda wasn't going anywhere. What he really wanted was to win. Okay, you still don't get it. You still can't get why Senna couldn't just hold his position, stay in 3rd or 4th place. Ayrton could not do it. He couldn't race in the rain. Remember the little monster we talked about? That little weakness disguised by it also being a strength? That same one that as a child he ignored while it grew bigger and bigger and bigger. Until now, when it devoured him. He was gone. It was motivation. That's it. That was his strength and that was his weakness in the wrong condition. With all the crazy things going on around him and to him so rapidly and so terribly, his motivation took a bulldozing as he felt the helplessness trying to beat the mighty Williams, the Goliath in a broken McLaren. The fact that the Ferrari of Jean Alesi was keeping up with him, that's already emotional damage. Not because of Jean Alesi. Jean Alesi is a good driver. It's the Ferrari. Michael was also giving him another fight that he was sucked into, but this McLaren was not working. And what Senna really wanted was to win against Nigel Mansell. Senna only raced by motivation. Senna said before that after the 1989 Australian Grand Prix, well, he was really not motivated for 1991. But when he put on the helmet, closed the visor, his motivation clicked by instinct. He was locked in, fully dialed in. But this year of 1992 was just different. It was unbelievable. He was shaken, Driver's concentration is the most important thing. It's more important than technique, it's more important than anything, because your concentration decides whether you will induce your technique right or not. And because he built his concentration on motivation, it snapped. His head was constantly full of questions. It wasn't as easy as 1990, as 91. And because he didn't respect Rain, well, she punished him. His concentration snapped because it was built on motivation. Same reason he spun out 1989 Australia. But Senna was always like this. It wasn't considered a weakness because motivation is what brought him to the title win in 1990, 1988, 1984 Monaco. All those early 1980s actually. His glory came from his motivation. He was never more locked in. He never had a closer connection to his car. He was never more of a beast than when his motivation was right on the top. And this year, 1992, well, it was the year that his strength would catch him, the shadow attempting to absolutely devour him. Look at this on board. Look at his lack of control, lack of concentration. He looks like a rookie. He's making constant corrections until he crashes. It got so bad, so dark, to the point that he even called his old friend, Alain Prost. He told him, Alain, please come back. I'm not motivated to race. I was like, no, I can't race you. Such a driver, almost otherworldly, so skilled, with such an innate feel, unreal IQ. He controls other drivers, attacking and defending as if they are wrapped around his finger. Yet with such a strange weakness. Seems so unprofessional. It doesn't match his pace. He can't be this weak. And you're right in thinking that. Ayrton is stronger than just sulking. Like I said earlier, when he puts on his helmet, he instinctively is motivated. Racing is who he is. Racing is in the blood. Close the visor and the adrenaline is pumping. He's focused. He's more concentrated than Ross. But this year, I'm afraid it wasn't just that. It was mixed with questions in his head. He just couldn't get it down. 1992 was definitely Senna's hardest season in Formula 1. He considered retiring, possibly coming back later, dumping everyone for the year. He'd be at the end of it, have a terrible race, demotivated and absolutely diluted. In anger, he would say, this is it. I'm quitting. I'm retiring. This is no good. But just give him a little while and later he'd start questioning what he said. For 1992, the biggest battle was not against Nigel Mansell. It wasn't against Patrese. It wasn't against Schumacher. It was against himself. But he still fought on. He was still strong enough to fight on. And guess what happened? It took a little while, but in Monaco, Senna got his first victory for 1992 Grand Championship. Hungary and Italy, he also won there, but those were his only wins for the year. Ayrton managed to make his Firebird alive a few times. Imola, he saw a chance, and he attempted a spurt to get up to speed again. He started lightning fast, staying with the Williams. He was so rapid, so fast, staying on their asses. But once again, the Williams just bugged off. Ayrton trying to catch up, Schumacher crashed. Just a few laps and we see Ayrton's rapid driving is back. Although until the finish line he had a lonely race, far in front of everyone else in the field, but far behind the OP Williams. But there's something we didn't know. You see, Senna stayed in his Mclaren for quite a while, drained and in pain, most possibly from a little muscle spasm. Same thing he got in Brazil when he won first time with the gearbox that wasn't working. 1992 was definitely hard, very dark and very terrible, but we still saw little glimpses of the Firebird. Senna still had it in him. Like I said, he was stronger than sulking. Senna might drive only by motivation, but he's a strong man. It wasn't pressure. He absorbed pressure like a sponge. It was helplessness and hopelessness. That's what he had in 92. That's what dropped his motivation. Ayrton consistently had mixed feelings. Why must I break my back for the soapbox? Same way Alonso felt with his GP2 engine. But he still had the burning desire to win. Although, in all honesty, we can enjoy Monaco, Hungary, Italy as much as we want. But in the end, Senna didn't just lose to Nigel Mansell in his Williams, but he lost to Michael Schumacher in the championship. 1992 was definitely a year to forget for most Senna fans, but I think it was actually more important than that. It's one year I look at very often, because it was part of refining the legend of the Senna. But then something shocking happened.
I don't know whether you're going to get tired of being asked this question, but the fact that Mansell just announced he's not going to be in Formula 1 next year, does it open any doors for you at Williams, you think?
I really don't know. It may be, but it may be not. It's really a difficult situation. It's impossible to say the outcome of it, and only with some more time we will be able to know the facts. I think only that the fact that he announced his retirement is a result of his own problems with his own team. And although it's well known that I've been trying to negotiate with the Williams team for the future, and many people think that that's the reason that Nigel is retiring. I can tell you it is not. From what I know from inside, it is not. You know, the reasons are others, and they are not from a week ago or a month ago. They are from months and months, just a build-up of a different events which have contributed for this result.
Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised. And I'm not happy either, if you believe me. I think it was an inevitable situation, and I just think that the reasons behind it were not the right ones. I think I expressed the feeling some time ago, a couple of months ago, that I wouldn't be prepared to continue driving next year unless I felt I could competitive, and that meant not that I had to leave McLaren or anything. It just meant if you feel you have some light at the end of the tunnel in which you can work and make up and be back there in a competitive way. And if that situation did not turn up for me, then I wouldn't drive, without really wishing to stop, because I mean, I'm only 32 and it's no sense for me to stop. I mean, the peak of my career is still with quite a few years ahead. I have achieved so much credibility and so much experience that is not the time to stop. But on the other hand, it's absolutely no sense to just be a number out there, given the fact that whether you're fighting for first or second or a fifth or a sixth, you're just exposing yourself to a lot of danger continuously, a lot of stress, and a lifestyle that not always is attractive for me. Therefore, consider everything, the material benefits I got up until now and the ones I could get in the future, the personal satisfaction, the achievements that you can get. The only real motivation for me to continue was to be in a position where I could compete, improve, learn more, and be there, you know, be there fighting at least for it. And anything else, just I could not justify to myself. So I know what is the feeling when you don't want to retire and you have to go that direction. And for that reason, I have sympathy for Nigel. We don't normally go with the same ideas, but I think in this particular instance, I know very well what's the feeling like, and I have sympathy for him.
You know what happened after this? Alain Prost returns to Formula One. Alain cooked up a plan to join the overpowered, amazing Williams, and Williams was immediately on the offer. The three-time world champion Alain Prost returning in the most easy to drive and rapid car on the grid. Championship guaranteed. But in the clause, he put very plainly that he will not drive with Senna. So Senna's not allowed to join Williams. And Senna turned out to be very happy about this.
We had two fantastic championships, sport championships, last year and this year. And we had, in my opinion, two very bad ones in '89 and 1990. And they were a consequence of unbelievable politics going on and a bad behavior by some people. And I think now we are coming back to the same situation again. It's impossible to accept somebody to come to a team February in the year with a signed contract, veto myself and himself too, and eventually they change his side but stay with the veto on myself. And I think if Prost wants to be called the sole champ and 3 times world champ and come back in a sportive way, maybe win another championship, he should be sportive. The way he's doing, he's behaving like a coward. And if he wants to be sportive, he must be prepared to race anybody at any condition, at equal terms, and not the way he wants to win a championship. Everything has been laid down to him before you start. It's like if you go in a 100-meter sprint and you want to have running shoes, and everybody else should have lead shoes. That's the way he wants to race. This is no racing. And this is bad to all of us. That's it.
Ayrton, thanks for your candid answer there, and Nigel nodding there in agreement. But congratulations again, Nigel Mansell, superb win. Thanks for the record. Thanks, gentlemen.
The massacre on Senna was over. It was the Christmas break again. But after the break, 1993, something happened. People misunderstand Senna in 1993. Ayrton approached this year different from all others, and I saw something amazing. Saying you should have won if he is so good is a sin. Why don't you tell it to Hamilton when his Mercedes was breaking his back? For 1993, I saw a new image of Ayrton Senna. I saw a legend already made. I saw a spirit of resilience and racing immortality. He came with a new aura and a new spirit to the game. A spirit not needing to prove anything the way that he used to, but rather to show off his legend. It was a new game. He never had the fastest car. Since 1991 he was at a disadvantage, and since 1992 his car was a bomb! But still, he did not fail to show his auraful legend. To sum it up, Senna SEMPRE.
He was already pissed off anyway all the year about to having this engine, this Ford engine in his Mclaren, because he wants to fight for the championship, and through the numbers he know that he's not going to fight for the championship. So all what he could do is to wait for special circumstance and then to show everybody again what he can do. He's going to make everybody stupid, and that's exactly what he did.
Ayrton decided to take it one race at a time, not have any pressure other than his positive motivation to race. For the first race in South Africa, Senna realizes the speed of the Williams once again. He sees that awful nightmare of 1992 and he starts right next to his old rival, his wife, Alain Prost. What made the situation a little worse is, while Michael got the better engine. Yes, McLaren and Benetton, it's said that they use the same engine, Cosworth V8 from Ford. Benetton got the exclusive use of the Ford Cosworth HB7. While McLaren was using the HB5 till mid-season. However, from the British Grand Prix onwards, both teams switched to the HB8. So for the beginning of the season, Senna had a slight power disadvantage to Schumacher. And the Benetton chassis, it was actually fantastic. Quite lightweight too. Michael gets an incredible launch, the three of them gun it. Damon Hill makes a little mistake, and Senna absolutely flies forward, his Firebird reawakened. Nothing but pure passion and joy. He creates a gap, but after a while it becomes a field of the top three. Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost and Michael Schumacher. Alain, having the speed on the straights, comes past Michael on his way to threaten Ayrton. They get to the straight once again. He bombs out of the slipstream to make a move down the inside. Senna absolutely chops him. Deja vu. Senna keeping his advantage, keeping his place, holding his position in the corners, going right to the edge of the track. They come back onto the straight. Alain is close in the slipstream. He just manages to make a slightly better move, being more in front of Senna. They go side by side into the chicane. Senna comes out in front. Only after a third try we could overtake him on the straight. They went side by side in the chicane, but by the middle of the chicane, Alain was already in front. Senna's outbreak on him couldn't do much. Then Michael passed him down the inside. Senna and Michael pit together. Senna comes out first. Michael tries to to make a move down the inside. Senna chops him, but there is contact. Senna's rear wheel with Michael's front wheel. This causes an over-rotation for Michael Schumacher. And Michael turns out to be very happy about it. He even talks about go-karting. After a while, the track got a little moist. Senna managed to finish second, but was 78 seconds behind Prost. It was an absolute massacre once again. As much as Senna was taking this one race at a time, knowing the chances of him winning 1993 championship is extremely small to almost nothing, so he'd just been observing everything going on and waiting for a moment to shine, knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yet his fighting spirit was still on. And yes, this was a good thing, but this also means that he wasn't enjoying the McLaren Ford being miles slower than the Williams.
Renault a beaucoup évolué cette saison et la monoplace Williams semble...
Ayrton Mansell's closing in, he's lapping half a second fast. Keep pushing, keep pushing.
Williams parece conseguir prometer, pero Senna...
Mansell knows that if they sort out their transmission problems, the Williams cars will be unbeatable. Senna, of course, is hardly willing to make it easy for them.
E o Mansell tenta usar toda a potência do motor Renault. Vamos ver agora como é que o Senna vai reagir nas próximas voltas.
Olha o Mansell! Olha o Mansell! O Mansell já vai ficando por ali mesmo. O caminho parece livre para Ayrton Senna no GP do Brasil. Está de vantagem para Patrese, que herdou a segunda vitória.
We got a read on the gearbox.
No, we don't.
Ricardo, push to reach Senna. His pace has dropped.
Here, the Senna is stuck in a high gear, so he's tiptoeing around the corner. Can't allow the engine up yet.
Assim vai chegar, começa a cair mais forte aqui em Interlagos. E agora é a hora.
Patrese s'affiche dans ce la situation ne fait qu'empirer dramatica. Patrese está muito cerca, de que não aguantará.
Ayrton, one lap to go, 1 lap to go.
Give up, chap. Big balls.
It's the last lap of the race.
maintenir sa voiture sur la piste.
Senna has been tipped. Vamos ter as últimas curvas de Interlagos. Como se fosse casa para Ayrton Senna. De ponta e a torcida aguarda ansiosa. Pronta para soltar aquele grito.
Yes, that one. But now we're back. It couldn't have come at a better time. Interlagos. None of them had forgotten what happened in 1991. And the support for Senna, the pressure for opponents, it was only higher. It was the time he needed that support the most, and he got it all and then some. The Grand Prix starts and Senna behind the Williams takes a lunge down the inside of the first corner as Andretti has a massive crash once again, and there were 3. Senna now in second place, and the gaps started growing. There were gaps between the leaders and the rest of the pack, and there were gaps between the actual leaders. After a while, Damon Hill took advantage of Senna's slipstream, put the Williams power down, and overtook him into the first corner just like Senna did to him. Michael Schumacher was breathing down Senna's neck. But this was Interlagos. It wasn't going to be that easy for Michael. What happened? Rain came. And once again, Senna making a good decision in the pits. This time with double knowledge from actually being Brazilian, knowing how the conditions are. He immediately pitted and it immediately stormed. Alain Prost didn't want his nose, so he took it off. What is important is that Ayrton and Michael went into slicks first. They were clearly in a league of their own. I'm not just talking about this race. I'm talking about since Michael joined Benetton, since he came into Formula 1. They both had an amazing feel, perfect for the rainy conditions. Michael Schumacher's raw, splendid talent, amazing feel, good technique for the rain, and Senna's years refined gold we already know about and learning more about. The cars they've been driving have had an influence on who wins the race, but once the rain comes is when you see who's the true drivers. Remember, Senna and Schumacher have had their moments in front of each other where they've been exposed, vulnerable, made helpless, but most of the time that's been on razor's edge, driving at top speed, where Alain and everyone else is lifting off, taking it easy. Wet weather driving, even thinking of comparing Senna's and Schumacher's driving to Prost is absurd, considering not just how fast they are and not just how they've gone off when they've gone off, but also the number of times they've gone off. Senna and Schumacher have a stability, an order, a control in their rain driving. They can both dance with rain. And Senna shot down the inside of Damon Hill and immediately grew the gap. Benetton gave Schumacher an absolutely dreadful, terrible pit stop, so he had to fight his way back. And in the end, Schumacher came third, Damon Hill came second, and Senna won. He won his Interlagos home race for the second time. I think this was an even greater performance than what he did with that broken gearbox in 1991. And how special it was. Just look at the fact that Fangio was the one to greet him. And after this race, Senna was leading the championship in the McLaren Ford against the Williams. It was insane. But there was some other business Senna had to get to. He had another checkpoint in his mission. He was massacred in 1992. What Alain and Michael didn't know is that Senna had been sharpening his samurai. The checkpoint in Senna's mission was to do to others what has been done to him fourfold. This was the motivational method he would use, reaching for perfection to be shine. Come Donington, Senna says, "Hold my helmet." He said these words with a greater motivation and determination than he had in 1990. And he was ready to prove his legend in pure passion as rain winked at him. Starting from fourth on the grid behind Schumacher, the race starts. Senna is pushed by Michael to the outside, but Senna responds with an absolute throat cut for Michael, diving down the inside. On Wendlinger's bumper already, gets past Wendlinger from the outside of the track on a dry line, breathing down the Williams next with the 1992 honed Samurai ready for the cold slaughter. Not even giving Damon a chance to see his life flash before his eyes, he overtakes him. Then he sees Prost, and he says, "Oh, Prost is mine," and he absolutely massacres him. Everyone who had been slaughtered couldn't go any longer. The race started half wet but leaning much more toward wet, as the better line to follow was a lot of the time off the racing line, but it was getting dry very quickly. Senna went on a flat-out spurt, once again reunited dancing with rain, growing his gap with the wet tires to possibly stay in front when he pits for slick tires. A dry line formed, Senna comes into the pits. He comes back onto the track just behind Barrichello and Prost. Yes, Barrichello made it up to second place, but this wasn't a problem since Senna was going to easily re-overtake Prost and Barrichello. What happened was Prost went in for slicks, Senna gets in front. Schumacher driving in sixth place, and rain comes back. In communion with Donington, tripping a lot of drivers, messing up strategy, leaving it all up to driver performance. All up to experience, feel, connection with your car, reflexes, technique, skill, and mental state. Prost, thinking it would be smart, goes back onto wet tires, while Schumacher goes into the gravel. Then Damon also shoots into the pit. What does Senna do? Stay out. And for many laps, Senna not only shows his skill in driving in the wet, but also shows his brains and knowledge of this track in relation to rain in the area, knowing exactly when to pit, knowing how much rain he can handle on the slicks, and when it would be faster to take on wets. He was making the decisions. The team would say box, box. He'd say, "I'll tell you when we're gonna box." Patrese also decided to rather fall for wets instead of potentially falling for rain, and he immediately saw the Legend of Senna overtaking him with slicks. John Alesi, who was now in second place, was 20 seconds from Senna. Barrichello was now in third place ahead of Alain Prost, showing his own amazing pure talent behind the wheel. He showed he had an amazing feel in this race, and also showed what happens when Senna is your mentor. And from now till the end of the race, The rain was absolutely playing games with these drivers. It was bipolar. After a long while, Senna decides to pit for wet when it gets a little unbearable. The view is getting a bit misty and the dry line is getting wet. Looking from the view, you see drivers exiting the pits. Only once Senna was long in the track taking the corner, we saw Alain exiting the corner before the pits, before the long straight. That was the gap. Alain pits. The track seems to dry up once again, so Alain comes into the pits. A little later, Senna comes in. What happens this time? Well, the mechanics absolutely jack it up, literally jack it up in the pits. Over 17 seconds and Prost takes the lead. A little while and Damon comes in, but then just as Alain Prost was getting caught by Senna closing the gap, averaging around 110 miles per hour with fastest laps. A few raindrops fell on the track, so Alain Prost thought it would be good to pit, depending on his tires for performance. It's like he wanted to justify McLaren's flop in the pits. Damon followed. Senna chose to still increase his gap. After a while the rain calmed down, Alain pits for slicks, while Senna's already on slicks. There's an over 15-second gap between them, and Prost stalls under pressure. By the time that Alain Prost gets out of the pit, Senna laps him. 1 pit per lap, baby, let's go. Barrichello also lapped Petresi. Damon comes in for slicks. Senna's lapping more people, re-lapping some. Damon laps his teammates, and Alain Prost comes back into the pits, tighten a wheel or something, because he didn't change back to wets. Senna's still pushing, getting the fastest lap, average speed 180 kilometers per hour. He kept on going. When he found the limit, he found more grip somewhere else, somehow finding speed beyond perfection. The only thing that could break the speed, well, he wanted to have a cup of tea with his crew. That's what he came into the pits for. Or he was planning on, but then he waved his hand and it was like, no, sorry guys, later, I have to go. I'm holding a grudge for when you messed up my pit stop earlier. Okay, let's stop telling jokes. You know what really happened? You see, Senna as a Formula 3 champion knew Darlington very well, and he knew that coming through the pits, it would be a shorter track, and because there's no speed limit, so he can get an even faster lap and grow his lead. He made it out to look like he was coming for tires, and then his crew wasn't ready, but he was actually shortening his lap time. Before the last few moments of the race, Senna decided to come into the pits, put in some wet tires to make everything look a bit legit, to not look like cheating, like he actually wanted to come into the pits earlier, and to play safe, because it was getting a little more rainy now at the end of the last few laps. Right now it was just a cruise to victory, an end to one of the most glorious, majestic drives of all time. Ayrton Senna proved everything he needed to prove. He's the GOAT. And Senna lapped every single driver except Damon Hill, who he had behind him by 83 seconds. Senna did this with his McLaren Ford against the 1993 Williams. That's why he said, hold my helmet. I am so touched. Do we even need to go any further? Yes, we have to go further. There's still more important stuff to cover, because this is Imola, a track that Senna has had 3 wins at. He's finessed it in pure passion before, but it's also tripped him. Imola is another track to respect. For qualifying, Senna spun as he went full throttle on the curb. And the way this ended, Senna was almost a full second off Schumacher. The race starts, Senna gets one hell of a launch, getting in front of Schumacher, positioning himself just behind the Williams. Tamburello, they complete. Senna is up into 2nd place. Come to the first hairpin, Senna is absolutely pressuring Damon. Damon brakes a bit much, so Senna goes to the side and loses the rear. Damon makes up a little bit of ground before losing it at the slow chicane. Mow the lawn, boy. Senna tried to speed up, but he couldn't catch Damon. A dry line was forming. After a while, Damon got into the rhythm, and he absolutely sped, growing the gap, showing marvelous driving. And the old couple met once again and got into a fight. Ayrton this time on the defense. Ayrton performing his amazing 500 IQ legal weaving once again. As they exit this corner, he makes his own runoff area the inside of the next corner, making it impossible for Alain to overtake on the straight. Then he darts to the left of the racing line and to block him overtaking there. By this point, Alain has no momentum. You can't overtake him in the chicane. Ayrton gets good exit speed. They're flying on the left hand, right hand bend. Ayrton goes to the left. Prost thinks there's a gap. Senna chops him off. Braking zone, Prost takes it cautiously but then creeps up to Senna, using Senna to see how fast he can go in the corner. It's called tailgating, but Alain is consistently outmatched by Senna's pace in the rain. Senna's high level of control, consistent pace through the corners, proven once again he's on another level. Exiting the final corner of the track, Alain puts his foot down, trying to get the best exit possible because he knows his Williams will have the biggest advantage on the main straight. But Ayrton goes faster. Alain has to wait in his slipstream. As they are approaching Tamburello corner, Prost gets close enough. He thinks of making the move as he dives to the inside. Ayrton goes to the outside. They go side by side. Senna chops him off. At if not the fastest and most challenging corner of all time in Formula 1, probably sharing the cake with Eau Rouge at Spa. Senna was keeping Prost at bay for quite a long time, showing immaculate control of his McLaren Ford, pulling away until something weird happened. Very weird. Exiting a hairpin, Senna forgot to accelerate. Prost shot forward so fast, not really like a heavy bazooka, but more like a lightweight bullet aimed at a snail. And we don't know whether Senna was flat out, whether there was a problem with his car, or whether he literally forgot to accelerate, because we can't judge from the red lights behind their cars, because when it's rainy conditions, the lights are mandatory to stay on all the time. And I don't have all the data to Senna's inputs. What did happen, Senna immediately shot into the pits for slicks. He was like, that's it, I'm out for blood, I'm gonna get him. Lol. Has Senna ever not been out for blood? The race continues. Senna tries to go as fast as possible, take advantage of his slick tires to catch up to the group ahead. It took a while, but Prost pitted. So did Schumacher and so did Hill. And the group meets once again. And this time, Prost and Hill play one of the most dirty games on Senna. They come to the exit of a corner, and on the exit line when you get all the speed back, Damon parks in front of Senna. Prost gets beside Senna and blocking the inside so Senna can't get past Damon, and then he darts away, overtaking both of them. And Senna turned out to be extremely happy about this, as he sped past Damon and waved at him. It was looking good so far. It was going to be a Williams McLaren 132. But then, hydraulic problems. Alain Prost won the Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher did a good drive, he finished second. And this Castrol Formula 1 car did a memorial for Ayrton Senna. Do you know what Senna not finishing meant? Yeah, that. Only 2 points separating Prost from Senna in the championship. And from here on, it was downhill. There were other good moments in races. Senna was on the podium, Senna won Monaco, and Senna was in a battle with Jean Alesi. But then his car died on him. Came fourth in France. And then Silverstone arrived, starting fourth but scampering on to second. He was ahead of Alain Prost behind Damon Hill. And this race was different from the others. Senna already showed his speed in the European Grand Prix, Donington. This race was psychological. Senna was rather performing a factor of control not many other drivers can dream of. Ayrton was defending off Alain, who was only managing to be close enough to attack Senna at the beginning of the corners. Senna was holding his speed on the exits, so he can be fast enough to hold Prost at bay on the straight. And when Prost came to attack, this is what happened. Chop. About to come under the bridge, Alain is making up new ground, sitting in Senna's slipstream. They take the bend, Alain looks at the outside, Senna squeezes him and then flies away. Alain trying again for the inside and he's chopped off. And throughout the race at various corners, Senna was controlling Alain's speed. He'd do the invite sometimes. He'd brake early where Alain is anticipating him to brake, but then he'd lift off much earlier and fly away from Alain. And Alain, anticipating that Senna is going to be slow in front of him in a few milliseconds, keeps his pace more or less down, trying to tailgate Senna. But then the gap is grown. But nothing quite matched this moment. Alain finally takes a gap, being far enough ahead of Senna. His rear wheel and Senna's front wheel are in line. Senna squeezes him, taking the bend flat out, and he absolutely chops him. Alain had no choice but to slow down and rotate on that awkward line he was given. Senna once again was controlling Alain from behind him. This wasn't a side-by-side squeeze. This is power. Senna made Alain fear him. I'm not just talking about in the past, all the context and all, what's happened. 1989, 1990. I'm talking about in the moment. Michael, out of everyone, got the best seat to watch. He saw everything that went on between Ayrton and Alain. And then eventually, when Alain got his move done passing on the straight, Michael thought he could have an easy go. And boy was he humbled. Yeah, he got chopped, just like Alain. But watching everything that gone on, he learned quicker to rather pass on the straight. And he was much more powerful than Alain. Hell, he just managed to step out of the window of Senna's control. By the time Senna was close enough to Michael to possibly have an impact, Michael was already ahead, probably by about half a wheel length. And anything else Senna wanted to try, he'd have to try behind him. The fact is, Michael was skilled enough in his driving to have the confidence to face quite a few of Senna's tricks, but he wasn't naive. The race was still going on well, battle was still on, but then Senna ran out of fuel. You've got to be joking. What the actual diesel? Next race was at the Hockenheim ring. Senna gets a great launch and starts challenging the Williams. Michael made an overtake. There's the flat out bends before a chicane. Senna tries the razor's edge on the inside. Senna over-rotates trying to avoid him, but he rarely over-rotates. Yes, that's Senna. He spun out. But he made an incredible comeback to 4th place, which wasn't enough. Next race, his car died on him. Then it was Spa. Schumacher got a terrible launch, but he made his way back up the grid, and he finished in 2nd, while Senna could only do 4th. The championship was, well, basically gone. Senna had every reason to be pissed, and he had everything to lose. At the Italian Grand Prix held at Monza, well, I don't know what to say. What out of this world happened? Did Senna lose his senses or what? I don't know if his brakes were literally not working at the chicane, and if it was also not his fault that he totally locked up here, and his Mclaren deeply loved the car in front of him. And I'm not gonna go researching everything, seeing people's opinions. I'm gonna leave this on Senna. Yes, I know it might seem harsh, but zooming out from just this one crash, the truth is, by this time, Senna was just done with it. He wanted that Williams. You see, Senna could compensate for everything, fight to find grip where he can, make the McLaren a winner. But the fact is, he was already a multi-year champion. He already showed how many times that he is the GOAT. And there comes a time where you just deserve a good car. Michael Schumacher in his early Benetton days, Senna with Tolman and Lotus, they were both fresh. They were just happy to be there. Yes, they wanted to win. No one likes it when they lose. But they had all the motivation and eagerness to compensate for whatever they lacked. In fact, they took pride in the fact that their cars were underpowered, because they were still rookies. But it was the beginning of the journey. Senna was fighting for the best car, not because he wasn't able to win a race in a McLaren. He knew he deserved the best car. To win a championship, he needed one that didn't want to kill him, didn't want to blow up, and didn't have unhealthy crushes on other cars. But there was something else in the mix. We can't ignore this. Mika Häkkinen was Senna's new teammate. Senna offered him some advice, they ran close on the circuit, and then Häkkinen out-qualified him. Simply insane. Even though he blocked his own teammate and let Lacey through, I don't think that was on purpose. Ayrton Senna's engine once again gone. Senna at least won at Suzuka one more time, and he won in Adelaide. But then something crazy happened. It was Senna, Prost and Damon on the podium, and Senna called Prost up first and then Damon. The biggest rival in his career. There was a sense of camaraderie. Because yes, we are rivals, but also we are all racers. Senna once said before, life is too short for enemies, and we stand together. We will kill each other, but still save each other's lives. But little did Prost and Senna know, that was the last time that either of them would stand on that podium. In this little game of ours called racing, as much as God cares because he loves us, he's interested because we are. Let's be real, racing has no greater meaning, it's just our little game. What I'm saying is you can't pray to win. Brother, what? But you can pray for safety, peace and strength. It's a stressful game and it's a dangerous game. God cares about your well-being. This is what Ayrton did. And he said that God strengthened him and helped him throughout the lot of his stress, throughout his life, the good times and the bad times, and the stuff. You think 1992 was just the year Ayrton managed to get through? Oh, how evil of you. You're not giving credit where it's due. These were defining moments of Ayrton's life that unfortunately and shamefully nobody cares to talk about. There was a peace, strength and composure from God keeping him going. When he was in the gutters, when he was least motivated, well look, he got back up. It is such a shame that so many times athletes who glorified God were silenced. I won't mention names, except that his name starts with a K and ends with an A. Yes, the system also bullied him. The greatest part of using your talents is glorifying God. Do not forget that. Ayrton in himself was a man who didn't want anything less than perfection. When Tolman, Lotus and Mclaren thought their cars were fast enough, he thought no, it can be better. He mentioned edges that needed to be ironed out, that others thought were normal to have and unnecessary or unrealistic to iron out. While Ayrton Senna wanted perfection, but Ayrton and his crew always worked together well. They loved each other. He would stay up late while his engineers are working on the cars, support them, give feedback, and even when he was completely not obligated to stay for anything, when Mika Hakkinen was testing and giving feedback, he would stay and support, listening to Mika's feedback, hearing if it's right, learning his driving style, how it relates to the car, and how he can possibly help be the best mentor he can. On the racetrack, Ayrton had the same motivation. Real, just, safe, perfect racing was what he strived for. In 1990, after the 1989 work of corruption, Ayrton spoke out against the lawlessness that abounds in racing. He fought for fairness for himself, losing 89 not due to better driving but due to plain corruption. He was fighting for himself. He wanted the championship, but he was also fighting for truth and integrity, not dropping his values down 1 millimeter. And in the end, to get fairness in makeup for 1989, he had to slaughter Alain. Yes, that was extremely risky, aggressive, very strong, over the top, but for solving the problem of corruption, for what had to be done, this was the way he had to win 1990. He had a godly moral compass in him. That, along with his ruthless motivation, was not bending for Alain or Balestri. And it turned out he had to crash at the first corner of Suzuka. Yeah, quite ungodly. Look, here's the thing. They crashed at the slow chicane the previous year. They've both been in their own crashes. If a lap was already passed, and they were passing the start-finish, with speed they're already carrying out of the last corner, yeah, this is quite a devilish move. But they just started the race. Ayrton did consider everything, and he said that if Alain on the illegal, cleaner, more grippy line gets ahead at the start, he doesn't care what happens, he's taking the gap. It was thought through, and it was the way he solved the problem. But there came a time where he did drop his values an inch. Just an inch. Just an inch! It was a 300-kilometer fall from dignity. Disgusting! Suzuka once again. Ayrton already lapping a whole lot of people, trying to get away from the pack behind him, while Eddie Irvine thought it would be smart to make a name for himself. Very late lunge, he overtakes Senna, and after winning the race, Senna was very happy about it. But before we get into what actually happened, another life lesson. I need to get something clear. When Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost were fighting, it was a high-pressure performance at razor's edge with everything riding on every move made. Eddie Irvine literally had nothing riding on that move. He was a rookie seeing the scenery of Suzuka. When Michael Schumacher was inspired by the 1991 Suzuka crash, when for the start, according to Schumacher, Senna was a bit slow, and then Schumacher obliviously crashed into him. You're gonna say it's the same move. You're gonna say it's the same move as Suzuka. Okay, first of all, just like Eddie Irvine, there was absolutely nothing riding on that move. You're not the same. You're still too thick to understand. Well, then let's go over Suzuka again. Spatial awareness. If you don't know what that means, ask Google Translate. The move Senna pulled on Prost was a late lunge, just like Irvine's and Schumacher's. We already established that the whole championship was riding on that one move. Look, behold, and observe the spatial awareness of true champions. Senna takes the lunge down the inside. He is nearly on the grass, taking the gap that was given to him by Prost. Prost was wide on the racing line, not defending at all. They get closer to the corner. The road bends to the right. They both go wide to get the best racing line. Alain has already seen Ayrton on the road. He's right next to him. They start turning in. Look and observe not just how much space Ayrton is giving Alain, but also when he is turning in. This is the precision of champions. Exactly how many hectares of space do you have on the inside, Michael? I don't see your steering wheel moving. If you're in the championship fight and you manage to by precision and true skill dethrone the champions, well then all cheers to you. No one cares about Senna anymore. Oh, but that's the what if. That's not the did happen.
Dangerous levels of window licking have now been achieved.
To be fair though, Michael also became an absolute firebird, and he had his worthy fights with Senna. But to the point, what we talked about like 11 days ago. Yeah, the move Irvine pulled on Senna, this is what happened afterward.
I was racing. You're racing. Do you know the rules that you're supposed to let figures come by when you are if you were going fast enough, there was no problem. I overtook you after you went 3 times off in front of me in the same place like when there was oil. And you took a very big risk to put me off on the race. Where did I put you in any danger? Oh, you didn't put me in any danger. Did I touch you? Did I touch you once? Yeah, you were that much from touching, and I happened to be the leader. You know, I happened to be the leader. And I tell you something, you should let the leader go by and not come and do the thing you did. Because he already hit you in front of me 3 times because I saw, and I couldn't collect you and him as a result. And that's not the way to do that. Well, I'm racing. I'm racing. I'm racing. So you just got the base. You're not racing. You're driving like that's what you do. Okay, you're not racing. You're like a idiot. Okay? You were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Really? 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 Yeah. Just tell me one thing. Yeah. Who is supposed to have the call? You or the leader of the race? Leader of the race. Supposed to let leader of the race. So, what have you done here? Huh? What have you done? You were too slow. I had to overtake you. Really? How did I let you? How did I put a lap over you if I was too slow? Explain. Because on 6 you were quicker than me. On wet you weren't. Really? How did I come and overtake you on wet? How did I come and overtake you on wet? I can't remember that. I don't actually remember the race. Exactly, because you are not competent enough to remember. That's how it goes. Fair enough. You know? Fair enough, that's what you think. You know? Fair enough, that's what you think. You think I'll watch out for you. Yeah, you're gonna have problems, not with me only, with lots of other guys. And starting with the FIA. Yeah? You bet. Yeah? That's good. Yeah? That's good. It's good to know that. See you out there. It's good to know that. See you out there. You gotta learn to respect when you're going wrong.
For the first time in all recorded history, Ayrton Senna is rightfully punished by the FIA. Progress! I gotta say one thing, the tallest trees get the most wind. No, stop right there. I'm not trying to justify his act.
Nothing justifies hitting him. Nothing justifies, and I'm not justifying myself.
It was downright wicked. I'm explaining why the wind took him down. I'ma use this context to give a side note life lesson. When people fall, doesn't really help to retell them what they did wrong that they already know, or judge their souls. Leave him alone. He knows he punched Irvine. Everything works much better if you rather be helpful. Like, I don't know, pray for your neighbor. The rest is all between him and God. Ayrton mentioned before that he has had trouble fighting by his motivation while staying godly, kind and composed in the process of fighting for fair racing. But he has before. His famous talk in the press conference, it was absolutely beautiful. What I'm saying about helping your neighbor, it's a similar thing to the racing camaraderie. Yes, we're rivals, but we're all racers. Please tell me you understand. This just goes to show that like us, Senna was human. We all make mistakes. And it takes a special spiritual dedication to always stay composed. Not just on the outside, but also on the inside. And he got back up again. And this time he got up, something amazing happened. For the 1994 season, Senna signed with Williams as Alain retired. But with this came, I say, an even bigger scandal than 1989. Although saying that, if you look at the big picture, you realize that this is the same scandal that started in 1984. It definitely left a bigger and much more important impact on everything. But let's not jump the gun, because that gun is a sus gun. It's worse than a loose cannon. And hopefully now Senna would finally get a car that can win a championship again. But you see, what Williams did wrong is forget to make a great handling car. The weakness of Williams was, well, it was too dependent on active suspension. Instead of making a well-balanced car first and then installing the master system around the well-balanced car, assisting it to be as overpowered as it was, rather they made an amazing revolutionary active suspension system that they tuned the car around. So the car leaned on its system and sheer power as a crutch. And you say, why are you talking about this, Jesse? Yeah, it would be trash without the active suspension system, but guess what? It does have it. Well, you're wrong. It doesn't. 1994, FIA decided to ban all electronic aids. Active suspension, traction control, launch control, the whole lot. This is beyond emotional damage. Is this what death feels like? Senna's words in the driver's briefing, it was only not allowed for me, but it's allowed for everyone else. Well, they greeted him again. But you see, what is simply insane, this wasn't just the FIA hating on Ayrton. Ferrari was also trying to make a smart system like Williams, but their one was failing. It wasn't working, it was breaking, it wasn't good enough. And then they threw their toys out the cot that Williams is working and not theirs, and started protesting that Williams has an unfair domination. This encouraged the FIA to slaughter Senna. So now the new FW16 Williams for 1994, without the active suspension system, well, it handled amazing. About as amazing as it looked. It behaved like an absolute bastard. But the crazy thing is, for pre-season testing, Ayrton and Damon were testing the Williams with the system. Then only afterwards they were driving the Williams without the active suspension system. Basically, Frank was like, hey Ayrton, raise up your hopes, feel how amazing this car is. Only to shoot him in the foot with something darker than you could have imagined. Let's go through the details. You see, the Williams active suspension system was made to maintain the peak level of grip by the perfect ride height for low and high end downforce and weight balancing. Basically everything that you do to get the right amount of grip on the tires you want for the action you're taking, whether it's cornering or exiting a corner or braking. The car virtually balanced the center of gravity for you. But for the racing version, the real FW16 for 1994, Williams bolted on a narrow setup windowed passive suspension system to a chassis that was designed around active suspension. As I already said, the thing is, they couldn't just build a whole new car, or if they could, they didn't. What they did is work with what they had, and it was an absolute ticking bomb. The aero was also designed around the active suspension system. The perfect ride height, pitch, squat, and roll margin that active suspension maintained for optimal grip, while the aero was designed to perform best in that window. But now there was a natural suspension reaction to weight transfer. It's passive suspension, meaning it's the driver's job to control the center of balance. And in a normal car, while shifting weight is part of driving, controlling center of gravity, balance, and rotation, what we always talk about. And Senna was an aggressive weight shifting artist. But for this car, the truth is the aerodynamics have only one operating window. It's how it's made and tuned. So anything out of the operating window and the aero does more than stall, resulting in snap oversteer or understeer, either one of them. The diffuser especially was a problem. The diffuser designed for the perfect ride height and rake for peak downforce. Now going out of the operating window by dive and squat wasn't just messing up the grip by stalling the aero, ruining the front to rear grip balance, but also during lateral weight transfer in the form of leaning, yaw rotation, in cornering. The aero would not always stall evenly left to right, hence sometimes shoving the car violently to the left or to the right, with all these aerodynamic parts working differently outside of the operating window, causing its own turbulence and side winds. If there was any slight steering correction, well, the car was sucked into the side. Sometimes overload of yaw, sometimes understeer. Depends how exactly it happens. They tried to solve the problem by stiffening up the suspension, but this only made it worse. Besides the fact that there was now less rear end traction for exiting corners, if the road was bumpy enough, cornering over a bump, the inside would already lose downforce by the lean aero stall. While the inside stalls, the outside might have a downforce increase, and then bottoming out over a bump, you'd suddenly lose all downforce while getting super unstable porpoising after already getting sucked to the side by some invisible side wind. But due to the suspension being stiffened, this has a slightly lower effect, right? Well, no, it's worse. It became disgustingly nervous over bumps. Stiffening up the suspension did not help at all. To help the diffuser, they also went on fitting some weird arrow-shaped lower rear wing. It was to help stabilize turbulent air from the diffuser that was stalled by pitch. It was like a fan, but it wasn't helpful enough to be fair. What made everything worse is that weird arrow wing. If the airflow detached early from the wing, it could interfere with diffuser evacuation, basically clog the airflow like a blocked drain, slowing down the air, creating turbulence, creating a massive lift in the rear end, resulting in snap oversteer. You might just take off backwards, and to make it all worse, the wheelbase was shortened. So when it snap oversteered, it was far more fast and brutal, 10 times more punishing. And you say, why make aero so concentrated in one narrow window? But this is what happens when you perfect something. Cars get more peaky when they get grip maximized. Grippier tires and downforce, you stretch the limit higher. The margin gets smaller, leading to more unforgiving snapping over the limit. But this is a different type of thing altogether. The truth is, in a normal car, the limit is up there and that's it. The way they tuned the aero was perfect for the active suspension Williams. Everything was tuned to the max. But not for this drunk demon. In this FW16, you could feel the same peaky snap of oversteer going around the corner at 350 kilometers per hour, exactly the same way as if you went around the same corner at 80. When the fuel tank was full and when it was near empty, the car would have totally different aerodynamic characteristics. I think Ayrton got a concussion from driving this thing. Look at him. He doesn't know what to do. He's dumbfounded at how bad this car can possibly be. He did so much work to get competitive again, and now he's at the same place he was. He was mad, more than emotionally damaged, yet he was resilient. And so when that visor was down, no matter what he had to do, no matter how hard he had to wring the neck of that Williams, he went flat out and beyond. And he was head and shoulders above Damon Hill. In the end, something amazing happened. Brazil, the first race of the year. Qualifying goes on Friday and Saturday, and Ayrton Senna comes within a tenth of beating Alain's record at this track. The record Alain set in the active suspension Williams. That 1993 one, that OP one, that one that practically drives itself. Senna came a 10th from breaking that record, driving the drunk demon. Qualified on pole and the Grand Prix starts. Senna and Schumacher on the front row get a good launch, but John Lacey gets the best one, shooting past Schumacher, threatening Senna on the inside of the first corner. With unreal car control keeping the Williams on the track, Senna still in first grows his gap, once again displayed his Firebird. And for a while, it appeared like they're on the same side. After a while, Senna and Schumacher pitted. Schumacher got the better pit and went into first place. Senna was chasing him down. Next time they pitted, the gap was about 5 seconds. Schumacher was still in front. Senna was chasing him down. But remember this. Look at that. You see that thing there? Yes, he was refueling, which means he'd be driving a totally different car now. Senna was chasing Schumacher. It was all looking promising. But then she struck Senna. Absolutely stabbed him in the back with a blunt knife. He spun out on the last corner heading to the last bend. And the Brazilian fans were really pleased with Williams. This car was just unraceable. You can't use this to win a championship. From the beginning of the race till the end, whether he was at 300 or 20 kilometers per hour, he was on razor's edge. And as we know, it's a sus razor. It's not the fine art he performed on his McLaren, but more like he has control, and then out of the pink, he randomly doesn't. But for the Pacific Grand Prix, Senna snagged out pole again. He didn't care about dying. He went to the limit that he felt. If he crashes, he crashes. If he gets pole, he gets pole. If he wins, he wins. He took advantage of the Williams power, this time with a double wing. He was starting on front. However, the race starts, Senna slips behind Schumacher, and then once again the McLaren has love issues. And that's how it ended. There had been 2 races. Senna got pole on both of them, but DNF'd on both of them. Schumacher won both of them and was leading the championship, and Senna had not scored a single point. This was dark, and it was only gonna get darker as we come to Imola. Come Imola, the road surface was absolutely trash, like a tollgate. Okay guys, I know you like tollgates, I do too. The fact is, these are Formula 1 cars. Senna and Hill felt it the worst. The car was terribly unpredictable, all over the place like a drunk peasant. Going off was like a relief. Senna found a way to finesse the car to prioritize less mistakes. When the car wants to pull out its uncontrolled yaw, he would let the car rotate itself, instead of inducing and forcing rotation and then correcting it. Not knowing if he was going to stay on the track or not, he would let the car rotate itself. But something rather crazy was happening behind the Benetton curtains. Senna's out of his car. You'd think he'd have a coffee and talk to some chicks. No, this is Senna. What he was doing was listening to the Benetton because something was sounding a little off. He heard some masterclass electric sounding system of throttle modulation. Yes, that old thing, traction control, that was banned. You could hear it on the exit of the corners, mostly on hairpins. Benetton found a way to bend the rules, getting the benefits of traction control without blatantly breaking the rules. Check what Scott Mansell has to say about it. He breaks it all down. You should be able to gauge by now. My main priority is not to get the most views. I mean, hell, I'm recommending another YouTube channel. I'm not trying to make the best spin-off documentary on Senna. We all have information about these heroes, and I'm sharing everything that I know. That's why we rushed through 1988 so fast, and 1989, 1990, everyone knows that. That's why I focus so much on 92 and 93, and now we are at 94. YouTube is a platform for all of us to share information, not for us to see who can make the best video of Senna crashing into Adelaide. Back to the video. Well, Adelaide had something to say.
I must say that what he said, because I cannot judge myself, but he was convinced that the Benetton was cheating. He was very upset and he was in big trouble because of that. And again, not very happy with the car, with the performance of the car. So he was obviously not very happy, saying that he could not find the motivation. Many times he told me, I cannot be motivated against Michael, against other drivers, and he was really like if he had not lost his passion. He had promised the car, promised the team the safety, maybe some small personal problems possible, but he has lost his skill, and that was very surprising.
Yes, this is the result. I mean, yes, Senna is stronger. We know this. He got stronger after 1992, and he was an absolute monster in 93. But how do you possibly have hope and motivation when every single possible thing that can go wrong, or even impossible, goes wrong? This is no more about resilience. This is about survival. But something far darker than driving this bastard was happening. Practice and qualifying for the San Marino Imola Grand Prix, and yes, the car is not changed. It's almost gotten worse. But then as they are looking for progress, trying to get the right setup for the car, at Barça Variante, Rubens doesn't slow down enough, goes in a straight line, locks his brakes and then hits the curb. Lucky he was okay. But that was a hell of a hard crash. Literally flying into the barriers. Although it was a weird one. Maybe he outbraced himself, but it looked like something was greatly off. But if it wasn't already dark enough, well, the fact is Senna's got big hands. The front part of the cockpit, the frame around his hands, holding the little windscreen, it was too small for him. He had bigger hands than Damon, and so his hands were constantly scraping on the frame. What he needed was a steering redesign. Put the steering wheel lower so that his hands don't slice off. Remember this clip? Come on, you've been seeing it a lot in this video. This was actually in 1994 Imola. Senna took a track walk, so the engineers started working on the steering. Adrian Newey is the chief designer. Patrick Head is the technical director, and they have an engineering team. And the way they modified the steering column to accommodate for Senna's big hands, they cut it and did the most concerning welding job, making the steering column approximately 70% breakable, inadequate for driving. There was only 30% strength holding the two front wheels to the steering wheel that Ayrton was holding. The thing is, something was nagging on Senna. And it was more than just the sus handling of the car. Remember the steering? Ayrton's friend Angelo Pirelli, listen to what he said.
Yeah, he called me Friday in Imola, and he say, look, do you have a place to sleep? Say, what? You don't have money for the hotel? No, I have the money for the hotel. I want to come and what happened? And he say, I want to stop. What do you mean you want to stop? No, the car is not handling. This British team is crazy. I want to stop. Okay, Ayrton. What you want to do in your life? I will start to produce karting in Brazil. Say, okay, fine. Why not? Can you help me? You say, yeah, I will help you. Okay, I will take a decision. Probably tomorrow morning I will be in Milano. He decided the wrong way. He stayed there.
Friday before the race.
Friday before the race.
And
Before the qualification.
And he said the British team, he meant Williams, is stupid.
Yeah.
And he wanted to stop Formula One.
To stop forever.
And come to you to produce go-karts for the Brazilian market.
Yeah, all over Brazil, not just Brazil, South America. He was so powerful that he can, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, everybody can buy Ayrton Senna da Silva go-kart.
Yeah.
He made the wrong choice. He decided to go on and he was suicide.
Suicide in a way.
He was suicide because what happened in Imola is nothing to do. It was not his fault, it was a mechanical fault. In Italy they choose the check and they broke the steering shaft.
Okay, that's and he knew that.
He knew that.
In his heart.
Yeah.
It's important for me to clarify, Angelo is not first language English. What he said here, he did not mean that Ayrton wanted to commit suicide. He was not suicidal. He was referring to a suicide mission. The fact is, Senna knew something was wrong. If you think Senna didn't know about this, you think he was fooled into it, well, you can't be more wrong. You should know by now Senna's much more observant than falling for dirty tricks. In his dedicated preparations and his innate feel, something was going down in this San Marino weekend. So we don't have any proof if Senna opened up the car or not. He either knew it from his innate feel or he ambushed an analysis when his engineers were not around. He's not going to fall for a dirty trick like that. If you make a fatal steering system and Senna gets into it, it's not because he doesn't know. It's because he's knowingly walking into the challenge for a reason. And just the next day, Roland Ratzenberger at the Villeneuve curve just after the fastest Tamburello, going at about 314 kilometers per hour, he went straight on. Said to be 500 G impact, and this time it was fatal. What the hell was going on? This track was eating its drivers. One weekend, we're still just in qualifying, and there have been 2 huge crashes, 1 fatal. Guess what happens? Everything goes on. And we don't know yet that Ratzenberger died. We're on the track questioning everything, not knowing what happened to the driver who crashed over 300 kilometers per hour. Ayrton decided he's not driving anymore. We are closing shop. Yeah, he gave his boss the orders, and that helped influence everyone else to quit. Senna would start on pole for the race, but that was the furthest thing from his mind. He saw Ratzenberger, and he also talked to his good friend Sid Watkins. Ayrton had a chat with Sid. Senna was deeply distraught, questioning a lot. And Sid said, you know, Ayrton, you've been 3 times world champion. You're the fastest man on earth. You like fishing, so why don't we quit and go fishing? But Senna said, Sid, there are certain things over which we have no control. I cannot quit. I have to go on. Because there was something else lurking under the carpets. Senna had work to get done. His mission was not fully accomplished. Ayrton examined the crash site. Ayrton also talked to Niki Lauda. And then he got with Gerhard Berger and Michael Schumacher to reform the Drivers Association. It is absolute insanity for the drivers who are on the track over 200 miles per hour to not have a voice. Ayrton, head of the group, to push for driver safety. But you know what the FIA did? Jack. The Drivers Association was back to only please them for the moment, but they were not heard. They only continued like nothing happened. The race was to come on Sunday. Ayrton also got an Austrian flag, the country that Roland Ratzenberger is from. Senna's motivation sprung up. with a new purpose for this race. He said that he would win the race and then wave the flag so that Roland is not forgotten, so that there can be sympathy and change. So Senna was not just trying to win for himself, he was racing for Roland Ratzenberger. So in Senna's plan, as soon as he gets out of that car, best case scenario if he wins, he will drop the biggest bombshell on Williams and the FIA, and there will be change, 100% guarantee. Nothing could stop his determination. He was now motivated not just from himself but also for Ratzenberger, and he took the suicide mission with both hands. Nothing was going to stop Senna now. With a new meaning, he shouted, "Hold my helmet." The San Marino Imola Grand Prix starts. Ayrton and Michael get fantastic launches off the line, flying away from everyone else. JJ Leto stalls his Benetton. Pedro Lame, starting from behind, couldn't see the stationary Benetton. Crashed. Debris including a flying tire hit spectators and one policeman. For the start, in total about 9 people were injured. That's 11 so far with 1 fatality. Why are we dancing with the dark? What is going on? The race is put under safety car. The debris is cleared up. Few laps and Senna tells the safety car driver, "Go faster, my tire's getting cold." And in this moment, all the drivers start thinking more, because they're not racing. The speed is down, the instinct is off, the adrenaline is calming down, the thoughts and fears start creeping in. But Senna couldn't be bothered. As soon as the green flag was waved, Senna was racing possessed, 100% locked in, concentrated, focused, all for one thing: go the fastest he possibly can for the name of Ratzenberger and justice. On Tamburello corner, which is very bumpy, while the inside, which is the fastest section, is the most bumpy part of it, and he was going flat out on the inside with the Williams. And on this corner, it had been bottoming out. You can see the sparks, but Senna was managing to control the demon. A good distance from Michael. Schumacher was right behind him in second place. The gap wasn't awfully growing, but it wasn't shrinking. Schumacher was strong, and Senna raced at top speed. Holding tight his line, he bottoms out, but he handles it fine, until that ticking bomb ran out of time. No, why? The steering broke. He was hugging the inside and then he just went in a straight line. As soon as he felt he had normal connection to the wheels, he produced 5 Gs of braking. From over 300 to about 200 kph, went over the concrete runoff area. At contact with the wall, he produced 200 Gs. It was 300 less than Roland Ratzenberger's crash. Oh, well, he's definitely hurt. Yeah, it would have been fine if it was just a 200 G impact, but it wasn't. The thing is, a suspension part from the front wheel struck Senna's helmet with immense force, and the helmet just couldn't hold it. It went through and fractured his brain. All brain data was messed up. He had immediate internal bleeding, a concerning lot of it. His head moved, but that wasn't it. When finally he was taken by the helicopter, and Senna could no longer say, "Hold my helmet." He died. He's gone. Was my hero really gone? He miscalculated. He didn't consider Tamburello. Of all tracks to take a gamble, this one, he was dancing with the demon. But the work was done. He did his job. Mission accomplished. Remember when I said that he insists there's a guarantee there will be sympathy and change? He had the process planned out just like in the past.
I refuse to walk away from the fight. It's my nature to go right to the end, and that's what I'm going to do.
But because of the miscalculation, he perished. Yet, even in his death, he got his way. They added a chicane to the Tamburello at Imola, made the surface better at tracks, made the cars safer. Senna brought a reworking in his death, and there was more sympathy for Ratzenberger. They found the Austrian flag in Senna's car, and Senna got his way. Senna died doing what's right. Ayrton was courageous enough to bring the change, even if it took the death of him. This was another level of motivation. But you see, we gotta give credit where it's due. I don't know what was Ayrton's prep on Sunday morning when he woke up, and it is not for us to make statements or guess what happened. A relationship with God is the most sacred thing available to mankind. Ayrton said that God helped him throughout his mission, throughout his life. When he was being treated unjustly, when he was under tremendous pressure, career, he himself said that he gained strength from God. That wasn't motivation alone. Ayrton Senna was strengthened by the God who gave him that motivation when he was still in the womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I know the plans I have for you. At the end of the day, only God knows why Senna had to die. We personally don't like it, but God's thoughts are higher than ours. When we don't have the answers, we do not have any job to do other than to trust Him. Who are you to think you can question God? Were you there when God was forming the Orion? We do not know God's thoughts. But maybe it could be that the only way racing was going to get safer was for there to be a big enough impact in the form of Senna's death. Senna just had the biggest influence. That's why Roland Ratzenberger's crash didn't work. And in the end, destroying the wrong people in order to save lives is more important than crossing the finish line first. He kind of reminds me of Samson. And so my favorite moments of Senna, what makes him my personal favorite, it wasn't the perfect moments of 1988. It was 93. It was 94. That's when he shined. You see, if you judge how good Senna is just based on stats, you don't know jack. Senna raced with a motivation unmatched. It might have been his weakness, but the truth is, it's disguised because it's actually his biggest strength. Because when he was motivated enough, his potential was simply scary. We didn't know if it had a limit. It actually wasn't a weakness at all. It was the way he lived life. And it is the same reason that he absolutely loved and cherished winning the 1990 fight, the massacre in Donington, coming a 10th off Allen's time in 94. You see, because it was his motivation that decided whether he even races or not, when he won, he enjoyed it the most. He was always content with the decision he made, and there was always a reason. And he never had a career. He was always on a mission. Senna had a psychological power over all of his opponents. Here's a little bonus clip I need to show you. Ayrton, while defending, blocking and squeezing, he performed a hypnosis on Alain, methodically making Alain's speed into his own, controlling his speed from the front. After squeezing Alain at high speed, they come to a corner, brake hard. Senna's brake is quite light, but he's staying with Alain for the moment. But then he suddenly spurted forward, lifting off the brake very early. So Alain subconsciously thought he broke too early and too hard into the corner, and he lifted off and rather oversped into Senna's pace, outbraking himself. This is power. Senna didn't just manage to control drivers from behind, but also from in front. He handled his opponents like guinea pigs. You're talking about who's the best with numbers, who's the best championship contender? There are many greater than Senna. I'll even say Alain Prost is better. His math is perfect, but there's no one on the face of the earth who has been a faster driver than Ayrton Senna. It's not a case of he's always trying to go fast and now and then he gets lucky with 1993 Donington. No, Senna chooses when he wants to go fast and no one stops him. When Schumacher called him the GOAT, it wasn't out of sympathy for his death. It was because he knew when Senna wanted to go fast, he turned into an absolute firebird. When he wanted to, he could control anyone he wants. Who has this power? No one else possesses this power. Ayrton is without a doubt the most powerful driver to walk this planet. Even in his death, he ruled the world.